OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Bang on 7:30 this Thursday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, we bring you OTB AM. You're very welcome along. You can get us on YouTube, you can get us on Twitter, you can get us on Facebook, you can listen to us as a radio show, however you want us. We're there for you this morning, and the WhatsApp number is 0879 180 180. I've only forgotten it once this week. Owen, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Ger.
What's going on?
Not much. There's not much to report back to you in studio, to be honest.
I mean, the Champions League semi-finals have been decided. We know who's in them.
Yeah, what a lineup. You were already salivating at the prospect of Paris Saint-Germain countering a Pep Guardiola side. It's just set up beautifully for, as we were talking about yesterday, for us to forget about sports washing and to forget about the subtext and to just appreciate Phil Foden and Neymar. I
mean, the quality of the football is very, very, very good. It was less good last night, in fairness. And still City are good, but there was just, I don't know. It looks to me like PSG are the best team in Europe at the moment.
And when you think about maybe the hurdles that they've had to get over in previous years, like getting to the final was a big step for them last season, whereas Manchester City, they got over their hurdle last night and then they need to get over another hurdle and then another one. And you just wonder if the old frailty, well, the new frailty of Manchester City under Pep Guardiola might actually still rear its head. That you get the sense that the owners won't be happy, the club won't be happy unless they actually get a Champions League trophy. This was a hoodoo around getting past the quarter-final, and of course it was a massive deal for them last night. But there is still something in this idea that they did go 1-0 down last night, that they kind of sat with their backs to the wall a little bit in the early moments of last night. And there's still enough concern that they're going to get caught in the semi-final.
It is a quarter-final hoodoo, a little bit like the Irish rugby teams. And you know that the narrative after they win this tournament, if they win this tournament, will be, when we went 1-0 down against Dortmund and came back, that was the moment that we stopped seeing ghosts. They disappeared into the ether, and from that point forward, we were free to slash our way across Europe. If they lose, it'll be like, well, what was the point of that? You know, we saw the innate flakiness of the project at Manchester City in that game for a period of time, when, you know, not even a fully fit team in Dortmund, who have a temporary manager, almost managed to kick them out of Europe. So you can read that both ways last night.
Yeah, you can read it into it in a number of ways. The one thing I read into it was, how is this Dortmund team lying, what is it, 5th in the Bundesliga at the moment, which is absolutely remarkable given the talent that they've shown over the course of 2 legs, that nobody was talking about Erling Haaland, and yet everybody was talking about Jude Bellingham. Jadon Sancho obviously has been there for the season, injured at the moment, and they have a collection of stars who are so good right now that you wonder, how are they not at least a little bit closer to Bayern Munich, or at least a little bit closer to the top 3 in Germany. Like, when it comes to that Manchester City showing then last night, there was a sense from Jermaine Jenas in commentary that, don't worry, the goal is going to come. If Manchester City keep playing this way, the goal is going to come. But that seemed to have been the problem with Manchester City quite a bit in recent seasons, that against Lyon, they keep playing, the goal is going to come, and it should have probably come. And it happened to them a couple of occasions last season in the Premier League when Liverpool went on to win it. So maybe they've actually just got a little bit more clinical. Maybe they're creating a few better chances. That hasn't happened to them as much this season. But certainly when Jenas was saying, don't worry, the goal will come, I was like, we have actually seen this before. And I just would have a concern about that, especially given how unbelievable PSG are. And it may be all based on their counter-attacking ability, but it's going to be a brilliant clash.
Yeah, I think if they get beaten by PSG in the semi-final over 2 legs, that's nothing to do with the European hoodoo. That's coming up against Kylian Mbappe and Neymar playing together. There was reporting in L'Equipe yesterday that Neymar will re-up on his deal. So there is a possibility that this is a team that could be built for the long term if Mbappe decides to stay. We're all taking it as a matter of fact that he will leave this summer, because, well, why wouldn't he leave this summer? Kylian Mbappe can pick where he wants to play. And why would you continue to play for Paris Saint-Germain? Well, what if Paris Saint-Germain have just been in the final and just won a Champions League, and he's playing with Neymar, who's already decided to stay for the next while, who's in the type of form that he was in last week? That would be pretty exciting. You can see why you would stay in the, like the biggest icon in your own country, who has suddenly turned your league into a league worth being in. I mean, and
the domestic league being more competitive or more exciting this season than the Premier League, than the Bundesliga, than Serie A. La Liga and Ligue 1 is where it's at this season, folks, if you want a good title race going down the home stretch. But if there was one club that benefited from the pandemic, it's Paris Saint-Germain. Like when that inability of other clubs to sort of prize players away, that sort of luxury ability for a player like Neymar to say, I want to have my money and I want to play in a league that is clearly the best in the world, that ability kind of gets taken away, and you have to think a little bit more deeply about who's actually going to give me the biggest paycheck in these times. And it seems like Paris Saint-Germain are always going to be close to doing that. Like my favourite moment of last night, which I'm not sure if it still exists on social media, is Phil Foden atting Kylian Mbappe after the game. At K Mbappe, are you ready? He tweeted after at full time. But I'm not sure, was it Foden himself? Was it one of his social media team? I think Sam Lee was saying on Twitter last night that it was one of his social media team, which is just brilliant. I think that Foden's social media manager needs to get a raise for trying to stir the pot a little bit. Like, while he was having a conversation with Erling Haaland after the game last night, his social media manager was atting, not even subtweeting, atting Kylian Mbappe, calling him out, saying, get ready for the semi-final.
I can confirm that tweet no longer exists, Owen. I'm just, the most recent tweet from him is a tweet from April the 6th, and today is obviously the 15th, so there ain't nothing up from the 14th. Whoever it was, those men, it was Joe Hart after the Spurs got kicked out, wasn't it? Was the last time somebody from a social media team got thrown under the bus. Phil Foden, what did you make of a celebration going straight to Pep? Not a sight you see from a lot of footballers these days.
No, especially a manager who has used his minutes sparingly. Thank you for saving my hamstrings, Pep. I can't imagine that is what he was saying to him when he shouted into his ear. Phil Foden has quietly clambered up to the top of the pecking order this season. And
who's your daddy now? Is that what he said, do you think? What do you think he did whisper?
Yeah, maybe.
That'll put the hairs on your head? What was it?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I quite liked your Man City coach, boss. Don't listen to them.
Yes, I think all those things are definitely true. Better than the actual Iniesta is what I'd like to think he actually said as well. The Foden scenario has been fascinating because he has been a victim of Pep roulette at many times throughout the season, where you expect him to start a big Premier League game and then he doesn't. But post-Christmas, there was just a sense that when the big games came along, Foden was the man to actually start. It helps that Raheem Sterling perhaps isn't in the best place with Pep Guardiola at the moment. That puts him up one extra rung on the ladder. And it also helps that he's just playing unbelievable stuff and has probably been their best attacker, or certainly the most glittering attacker that they've had this season. I'm talking about players in their front three. You can now tell what Pep's best 11 is. A couple of weeks ago, before the quarterfinals, you were like, you can make an argument for a couple of players. We now know what his best starting team is. Foden gets a fresh haircut and absolutely knocks it out of the ballpark yesterday. And also Riyad Mahrez, when you've got this entire hoodoo resting on top of the football club, you're 1-0 down against Borussia Dortmund, and Kevin De Bruyne is on the pitch. Riyad Mahrez, who famously missed that penalty against Liverpool, was it last season or the season before, is like, you know what, Kevin, I'm going to take this penalty. I may have missed 5 penalties in my career, but I'm going to take this one and put all the burden on my back, and then scores it. I mean, those are cojones. We were talking about this last night. Mahrez's cojones, Phil Foden's complete and utter skill, and his ability to tweet people after the game as well. There's a couple of admirable things about this City team, it turns out.
OK, we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. If you want to get in touch this morning, 0879 180 180 is the number. We're going to talk about Simon Zebo's return to Munster with Louise Galvin in about 25 minutes' time as well. That's coming up at about 8:10 for you. John Duggan's going to give us his virtual insanity ahead of the golf this weekend at the Memorial. And then after that, it is an update on the Lance Armstrong motor doping allegations made by the head of the French anti-doping agency. Who knew? Who could possibly have thought that this might come up again at some point? And then at 9:15 this morning, we'll give you our TV picks at 9:15 from Joe Conroy sitting in for Sue Murphy. If you want to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. The hashtag is OTB AM. At 7:40 this morning, I want to say good morning to Mark Lawrenson. Mark, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, I'm good, thank you. So you talking about cojones on the programme? That's a bit early.
Well, we were who was in the commentary box that couldn't actually say cojones and called it co-Jones? Remember that?
No, I don't remember.
Oh yeah, it's a clip that keeps doing the rounds on the internet. So
Brilliant.
Yeah, look, let's start with Liverpool if we can. Just before half-time, one of the co-coms went, they've had enough chances to take control of the entire tie, not just the game tonight in the first half. And you're thinking it's very hard for teams to keep going spiritually and psychologically when you create a chance, and you're desperately trying to get back into it. And even your best players, the ones who are most reliable, aren't scoring for you.
Yeah, I needed the goal in the first 45 minutes. I mean, the chance for Salah would have been the one which... And when you think about it, normally he would just have dinked that over the goalkeeper. So whether his mind was racing a little bit or he took his eye off the ball, I'm not sure. But you won't get many better chances like that one. You get somebody like Real Madrid, most certainly. And that was probably one. And I don't know, Wijnaldum had one as well. But I think if you're going to do anything in a game like that, you nick a goal before half-time, it changes everything. Whereas Real Madrid go in at half-time and the manager goes, right, well done, boys, we're doing great, keep going, we might pinch a goal, etc., etc. So that's all good for them. And Liverpool, if you plot, what do you say? Well, come on, boys, we'll get there eventually. We're making all the chances. But you kind of know a little bit. You almost get that feeling thinking, I'm not sure that we will, or if we do, we might only get one and it might end up 2-1. So people don't kind of think too much about the psychological element in football, but with away goals and stuff, that's why it's just so good, this competition, because it makes a massive difference to the way that you approach games as players and managers.
I think the other thing is that at this stage of the competition, the absence of fans becomes far more pronounced as well, because every single mistake that a Real Madrid player made last night would have been absolutely hounded. Whereas a mistake happens, one of their mates clears it up, and Casemiro is there to put the fire out, and everything's grand. But actually, if the whole of Anfield is absolutely roaring at whoever has misplaced the pass, then he thinks about it a second time, and suddenly, they're obviously the world's best footballers, some of the greatest athletes of their generation, and yet at the same time it matters.
Well, listen, fortunately, I've been there, and what the cops do, they try and suck the ball in the net, basically, for want of a better description. But also a fact that just the noise when you come out onto that pitch, and obviously you never walk alone's blasting out to everybody around the stadium. And we know they're an outstanding team. Obviously, they were missing 2 or 3 players still, and I thought defensively they were very, very good. But everybody feels that pressure because certainly 1 or 2 of them, shall I say, they haven't played that many games in terms of defence for Real Madrid, and the slightest slip, and it's like the whole crowd would have been on them, and you can sort of smell blood on that particular occasion. But just wasn't to be. I thought Madrid actually played really well, and what did surprise me, they really, really pressed excellently. I thought they were very, very good, and they did always counter, have a threat on the counter attack.
There's sometimes been a bit of confusion about how much credit we actually give Zinedine Zidane for that. How much do you give him for the last 2 legs from a Real Madrid perspective?
Loads. He's a manager. He decides the tactics. He may not necessarily transfer the players in because how these things kind of work at clubs like Madrid and Barcelona. But no, I absolutely give him lots, and he was always on the sideline. He wasn't screaming, he wasn't shouting, he was controlled. And sometimes, you do look over to your manager in those situations, and he's not like looking at you thinking, "What the hell are you doing?" It's all good, and they were very, very controlled. I would imagine it was probably one of their better away performances of the season.
Control seems to be the word about Real Madrid at the moment, that there is a sort of manic energy that we expect from Paris Saint-Germain against Manchester City in that semi-final. But maybe the way Chelsea shut the game down against Porto the other night, it's going to be set up for a fairly intriguing tie, I'd imagine, on the other side of the draw.
Well, yeah, so Ramos will be back, will he not? Varane as well. So, I mean, straight away, you know, the three midfield players were just outstanding for Madrid, Casemiro and his two cohorts as well. I mean, you know, Kroos and Modric. They'll feel better. They'll feel safer because they know behind them, and the goalkeeper is outstanding. They'll straight away, you're comfortable, and you can take a few more chances. And where's the first leg? Do you know? Is it away from home?
Oh,
it's in Madrid.
Yeah, so it's away from home. So I mean, Tuchel will go there and he'll sit in, won't he? And because he's got loads of players that he can pick who are very, very quick on the break. So I would suggest that would probably be a smash and grab kind of night for Chelsea. And then, of course, it's different at home because you don't know what the score is and the outcome from the first leg, and that kind of decides your tactics for you, exactly how you're going to play. But as I say again, I think, you know, in football for me and playing in these games, that away goal is just so good because it can, in a minute and an instant, it can change absolutely everything about the tie.
And we saw a little bit of that last night with Dortmund scoring and suddenly being ahead against City on away goals. And all of the questions, certainly at half-time last night, all of the questions again about the Pep Guardiola era at Manchester City and their inability to break through this ceiling of the quarterfinals in the Champions League were right there. So in that context, how important is the second half performance and the fact that they managed to come through that tie?
Massive. It's absolutely massive. And I mean, I think they'll get through to the final. I just think it's the season for them to do it. We know they've made mistakes in the past in this particular competition, and you have got I've had the feeling that sometimes with Guardiola in this competition, he tries to be a little bit too clever. You know, he's like the really smart kid in the class who thinks he knows everything, but occasionally he doesn't. I mean, what they did against Leon, the way they set up was just a little bit strange when he'd never done that before. But you look at them now and, you know, they've got just so many players who are, they're all just really, really high in terms of performances, nearly all of them. So we left out last night, and these guys can come on and they can all change games. That's the thing. They've got so many game changers. It's frightening. But just the way they play and I think this is really, really difficult in football at this level. It's, you know, what you should do when you're playing these games, everybody tells you start at the very, very top in terms of your energy, commitment, all those kind of things. And then, you know, if you're comfortable, you can drop off a little bit. But it's very, very difficult to start in a comfortable position and then kick on. But they can do it. And I think that's exactly what they did in the second half. Obviously, score the goals at the right times as well. And we saw, you know, the way the goals went in, that they share goals in that team. It's a very, very good side. I mean, that's the tie of the round, isn't it? So, and we know what PSG are like as well. So that'll be fun, those two legs.
Yeah, I really can't wait for the quality of the football that we're going to see over those two legs. I did want to talk to you a little bit more about where this leaves Liverpool now that they've gone out of the Champions League, because we'd Graham Souness on the show yesterday, and
sure,
I was asking just that general question: how much blame does the manager get not changing his style when his centre back got injured? He's like, no, you can't suddenly throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is the thing that has brought you to this point. And he was very critical actually of the midfield. He kind of felt like Naby Keita's career hasn't really taken off at Liverpool. The Wijnaldum situation, it became clear fairly early on, a good while ago, that he probably wasn't sticking around. And Graham posed the question, what does that do in the dressing room? And then you've got the Henderson injury. All of a sudden, that midfield, other players have not stood up and led the team the way that he would have expected to. And I thought it was a fair point, to be honest, that...
Yeah, no, it is, all of them. And I think you'd throw Shaqiri in there because, you know, Klopp throws him on occasionally, and he's one who you don't know. He's not... I'm not saying that he can't be trusted, Shaqiri, but it's what will he give you? And he also looks like he needs to play on a regular basis. Otherwise, he can't quite get to the pace of the game. No, I'd agree with Charlie. Oh, sorry, Graham. As you know him as Graham, we know him as Charlie. But yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, you know, the other thing would be as well that the most difficult thing for Liverpool has been the fact that, you know, the normal three in midfield, they push the front three on. That's been the big thing, and they push them on, whether it's with energy, whether it's with obviously lots of the ball in great positions, etc. And like any team, it is the heartbeat of the side. And while, you know, Fabinho had to go and play at the back, of course, and then Henderson had to play at the back, and all those kind of things, and you kind of knew that they just dropped off in midfield, and consequently, that's why I think the front three started to struggle. But also the fact that, and I'll still go back to this, that, I mean, how long was pre-season? Pre-season was only about 3 weeks, wasn't it? And I think, you know, winning the league last year, and you get, you know, once you win it, it's like a massive collective sigh, which is, wow, we've done it. And, you know, everyone's expanded all their energy into that. And then you do need time off, you know, 4, 5, 6 weeks. But I just think that 3 weeks for Liverpool, it's shown with the front three that they've been running on empty for quite a while. Although, of course, last night they picked it up and they played really well and looked very, very sharp.
So last night actually gives me kind of, you know, some hope that actually they will be able to get back to the level that they were at previously. The difficulty from the Premier League perspective is that what City have done over the last 18 months, essentially, since they were last competitive against Liverpool in the title race, is that they've added a really good centre-back. John Stones has got better. Phil Foden is seasoned into the team. De Bruyne has reached a kind of a global superstar level. So yeah, Liverpool need to get better than they were when they were actually winning the league if they're going to go toe-to-toe with City next season as well. How do they do that? How do they do that this summer? What do you think they need to add?
Well, the first thing is they welcome back Van Dijk and Gomez and Matip. So that's straight away, you know, 3 steps in the right direction. I think you'll look at somebody in midfield who's a little bit more creative than what they've got. I don't really see anybody leaving, although there's always that kind of undercurrent with Salah, whose agent will put something out, which basically everybody puts 2 and 2 together and makes 47, and he's going to Madrid or Barcelona and all that. I'm not sure they can afford him anyway. But yeah, it's just that midfield kind of creativeness for me. I get what Charlie says about Wijnaldum as well, and you kind of, you know, the old pro in me kind of looks at him and think, you almost like want to leave him out, you know, because he's saying to the club, well, see you later, I'm out of here. And they'll have offered him a really, really good contract, obviously, but that's going to be, so he needs replacing. Henderson will be back. I don't think they need major surgery, but what they will need is a rest. And in many ways, and Liverpool fans won't thank me for saying this, but going out the competition is actually now a blessing in disguise. So what we got in the league, is it 7 games left?
Yeah.
So all sort of hands to the pump, have a real go at it, and then clear off. But then, of course, the other thing is, it's a flipping Euros, isn't it?
So you've got to manage the start of next season properly as well, and maybe that's about strength and depth. What about Trent and where he plays and where his future is? Because obviously big debates about the fact
right back.
100%, no questions. That's what you think?
Honestly, I can speak from experience because, you know, playing at the back and then going and playing midfield is just so completely different. Because when you play at the back, 99 times out of 100 in the games, you are facing everything. You are facing everything because you're almost, you know, you're the last step before the goalkeeper. You're playing midfield, you've got to play on the half turn, and it's different. And, you know, if you say, everyone says, oh, play him on the right side of midfield, well, he'll get picked up. You know, so somebody will mark him really tight because of his qualities on the ball and his crossing. And, you know, your Wolves coming to play Anfield and you sit your left-sided midfield player on him and said, don't leave him alone. Wherever he goes, you go with him. And that is so completely different. And the thing when he plays right back, if you watch, generally, he gets the ball and he's got space to run into. So he straight away builds up his pace. He's lightning quick, as we know. And he can take people on from a running position. not from a half turn or a standing start. And I think it means it's a massive thing that I just don't see it. I think maybe eventually when he gets a few more kind of what shall we call midfield skills, if you will, where he's played on the half turn and he can feel people in behind him and very, very close, that might be it. But no, at the moment, just stay at right back, because creatively he's as good as any right back. Well, I would say is there a better right back in the world at the moment? I can't kind of think. I think one of you boys might know better than me, but you'd have him in your team week in, week out. And yes, he makes mistakes defensively. Does he make many mistakes defensively when Gomez is back, when Van Dijk's back, when Matip's around? No.
You mentioned the Euros this summer, Mark, and I guess that's one of the concerns that Liverpool might have, because looking at what James Milner was saying after the game last night, he said that if we had played the first leg with the same intensity, it would have been very different. And it seems that that's been a bit of a theme, that if Liverpool are missing intensity, their performance drops off. Do they need to find a different gear when that level does drop off next season? Because players are going to be tired going into the start of next season once again.
Yeah, possibly. We've just obviously spoken about recruitment, and he brings 2 or 3 different players in, which will help. I think the thing about the first leg is it was strange. Now, I don't know if that is because all of a sudden, so the 2 young centre backs are playing and doing as best as they can. But I was going to say you go to the Bernabeu, but obviously it was Alfredo Di Stefano, wasn't it? The stadium, the training stadium. But so what I'm trying to say is you go out in that game and you look at the opposition as you come out, and you do it. Everybody does it, and they say they don't. But you look at them and think, oh wow, Kroos, oh Modric, oh Casemiro, oh crikey. And there's a little bit of that, and I don't care what the manager says, that's the way that it is. And if you don't start very well against top teams, normally you struggle, and I think that's exactly what happened. And then in the end, really, if you look, they didn't have any kind of great leadership in Madrid, and they were it was a very, very average performance. They got that goal and you kind of thought, oh, hold on a minute, hang on to that, and the second leg's going to be very interesting. But it wasn't to be. I mean, when you talk about, obviously, the fact that, the rest in the summer, I think they have to have a minimum, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 weeks. Quite a few of them, I would think, that will have a lot longer than that. So I don't see energy and all those kind of things that go with energy and everything. I don't see that being a problem next year. I just think they were dead on the feet at the end of the season. They had very, very little time in terms of to turn around. And like any team after a really successful season like that, winning the league, well, it's been 30 flipping years, for goodness sake. There's bound to be a knock-on effect, and that's exactly what it's been. I mean, even Salah's not been as good this season, but his goal-scoring record's excellent, isn't it? So Mane's looked a bit ordinary, which is unusual for him. Jota's been the one. And why do we think Jota's been the one? Because he probably didn't, well, not probably, he didn't have the stress of winning the league last season.
So you don't think there's a massive restructuring job that needs to be done? Get the 3 centre-backs back. How many first-team players would you like to see them buy over the summer? Or is it actually just about making sure there's depth so you can rotate players in?
Both. I mean, Wijnaldum's going, as we know, so I'd like to see them sign three top players, if possible. But of course, Champions League, and if they don't qualify for the Champions League, the players they thought they might get have got an excuse not to come. I mean, forget about the money. Everyone kind of gives these players the same money within reason, as we know. I mean, Paris Saint-Germain and all that, but will be a bit different. But generally, the money's fabulous at Liverpool. So you'd always attract players, but it is just that Champions League thing. And if you're not in it, you're giving people and players, I should say, a reason not to come to your club. And maybe they're also a little bit different because people get clout, don't they? And I think he's very persuasive. And, if he kind of rings you up and say, like, would you like to come and play for Liverpool? I think most of the best players in the world would come and turn up. So that might help them. But the Champions League makes all the difference for players.
It doesn't feel like we're getting to a point where Klopp is exhausted by the project or is burnt out. I know there was that kind of talk earlier in the year and how much he sleeps and all that kind of stuff, and the home record was bad and he didn't know how many they lost. But that all seems a little bit like noise. If you actually look at his demeanour when he loses or when he gets knocked out, he's incredibly angry and very pissed off with all the questions that anybody asks him. But he's been like that the whole way through. He was like that at the very start as well. Yeah.
It was like that at Dortmund, and I'm no doubt I wouldn't really know. Well, I've read a couple of books about him at Mainz, and I think very, very, very similar. And he's also in his career, he always seems to have 1 year where it all goes a little bit flat. But if it's 1 year in 5 or 6, that's absolutely more than acceptable. And I think he absolutely loves the job. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I don't think he'll get many better jobs. And when I say that, it's because the Americans they do not interfere with him at all, and they just kind of leave him. They just leave him alone. And obviously the chief exec kind of runs the club and, the financial side and all those kind of things. They've got the recruitment right as well now. Which is I think the second most important job at any Premier League football club now, or any top football club throughout the world. And he very much does what he wants. He runs the whole show, the whole playing side, and absolutely everything. And we know that he gets a club. He got it within the first week, 2 weeks, basically. He got the whole Shankly thing, and I hate comparisons when like somebody comes through and plays in Kenny Dalglish's position. They go, "Oh, he's just like Kenny." Well, he's not, because the fellow was a genius. But and everyone said, "Oh, he's very much Shankly-like," but he is. He really, seriously is. I mean, I take you back to that. I was at the game. They played West Brom, and I think they got a really late equaliser, Liverpool, to get a 2-2. And they didn't play particularly well. I think they conceded 2 goals from corners. And Klopp noticed a lot of people were leaving about 5 minutes before the end of the match, just away to his right, just in the Kop. And so at the end of the game, he took his players down to the Kop, like to kind of wave to the crowd and applaud them and all that. And I remember that because I went to the press conference, because obviously you can't get away for an hour in the car park, and I was sitting there, and someone said to him, "What was all that about? You just scraped a 2-2 with West Brom." And he said, "Look," he said, "if I can't convince our own supporters that we can score in the 94th or 5th minute of a game at home, what's the point?" And I just thought it was just a kind of really, really clever thing to do and say. And that's him. And people say, "Oh, he might walk away, he might do that." I don't think he will walk away. I really seriously don't think he will walk away. I don't think money's an issue with him. He signed a bumper new contract, didn't he? I don't know how long ago, and he's got years to go. And they're saying, German manager, and he boshed that off straight away, didn't he? No, not for me, because he likes the day-to-day involvement. But I think with these guys, and I think that Guardiola's got it at Manchester City, because basically, 2 guys who run the club, the 2 Spanish boys, they waited for him. He was always going to be their man. And he's another one, Guardiola, who basically runs that whole football side of the club. And, they don't get dragged into meetings about this, meetings about that. It's just the football side. And you don't get a better job, arguably, than these two have got. You might go to a place like PSG or something where you get more money, but it's for them for those people who've already managed, it's completely different. You just want to be in control of it. You don't want some bloke turn up, chief exec, and say, "Oh, we need to look at this," and he has none of that. Absolutely none of it. So turns up and does his training and sorts the boys out, and it's happy days.
Yeah, look, that makes perfect sense. And I think the mistake that maybe we've made as analysts is like, oh, he has a cycle. The cycle is a certain period of time. But Dortmund is a completely different scenario from Liverpool. With Dortmund, you always had Bayern Munich there. You could overachieve for a short period of time. You could win a league once every 10 years.
Do you not think we've got Man City there, though?
Well, you do. But, I mean, I think the gap between Dortmund and Bayern is less than the gap between Liverpool and City, and probably because of Klopp's genius.
Could you see Man City signing a Liverpool star, for example, in a way that Bayern Munich would sign a Dortmund star, Mark?
No. Well, they do what they want, don't they, at Munich, and they obviously let players run the contracts down, but tell them three years in advance. But he obviously had to deal with that at Dortmund with losing some of his better players. But no, I get what you mean, but I just don't. I think it's like who coaches the coach. It's a little bit like that, and when we talk about the players being tired and this thing and one thing and another, but I think also it's like he'll be tired. He'll be ready for a rest. And he'll be ready for his holidays. So I think he'll go away, do whatever he wants, and he'll be back and start the season. He'll have them 3 sessions a day. Well, I bet they look forward to that.
Well, I hope you're right, because it's our lives as football fans is definitely better having Klopp be his massive giant persona and having Liverpool back at this level and being able to talk about them as potential Champions League winners.
The other thing which people don't get with him, because they don't really know him, but also he takes the mickey out of himself, and I think people like that. He doesn't take himself too seriously, and there's always kind of a laugh and a joke. I'm fortunate enough to have been. I've not been to the new training ground because it's just been COVID since I've been in there. But just go to Melwood and do some stuff for LFC TV, and you could be interviewing one of the players, and he comes and joins in. Now, I don't think you'd see Guardiola doing that, would you? But he comes and joins in because then he wants to take the mick out the players, like whatever he's been saying, and say, "What's he been saying to you?" And he's kind of a different breed, but I think the thing with the players with Klopp is, he really is their friend, right, as well as the manager. And I think this is the key to it. He's not their best friend, and I think that's why it works.
Just that he's got that hybrid, right? Look, today is obviously the anniversary of Hillsborough, and I didn't want to let this conversation about Liverpool pass without marking it, because it is the other thing that Klopp has understood, that whole history of the club. The managers, even his treatment and relationship with Sean Cox after that happened, but he totally understood Hillsborough and the impact that it's had on the club, and he has always made it just a part of the general conversation as well. Yeah,
and he's not frightened to talk about it, but he absolutely, as we said about, getting everything, he absolutely, totally gets it. I mean, we used to go every year, and obviously to the memorial, but over the 21 years, that's obviously stopped now. But it's still, I think, it's still very uppermost with the football club. The only strange thing I think, and it's nothing to do with Hillsborough, it's to do with Heysel, and Heisel's never ever mentioned. Very, very, very rarely is Heysel ever mentioned. For whatever reason, it's almost like it's kind of been glossed over a little bit, which of course it should never, ever, ever be. But it doesn't get a mention. And as ex-players, and I mean, there's an awful lot of us live very, very close together in Southport and everything. And when we see each other and we go and have a beer and stuff, we don't talk about it. Nobody talks about Heysel. Absolutely nobody. And it's just one of those, I find it really, really strange. I really do.
Is it just a sense of shame?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that. I think there is definitely a bit of that, but there is, and I can't exonerate the football club completely, but that day, well, before that day, UEFA decided to obviously make it 2/3 that end, 2/3 Liverpool, 1/3 whoever. But basically, in fairness to the Juventus supporters, they paid to go in there, and I think, I'm pretty sure Peter Robinson, who was like the chief exec, general manager of the football club at the time, complained to UEFA about that. Why would you possibly do that? And I think there is some paperwork somewhere, kept a copy of what he said to UEFA. But then, so you can't exonerate what happened. I think there were different factions involved, and eventually, over the course of time, you get the real story. But yeah, it's just very, very strange. I mean, as people know, I spent a night in the hospital with some of the dead and the dying because I dislocated my shoulder within about 30 seconds of the flipping game starting, and I was obviously had to go to the hospital in an ambulance and all that kind of stuff. But it's just really, really odd that it never ever, there's never been that, discussion about Heysel, and it is a little bit like, and it feels as though it's a bit like a dirty secret in many ways.
I didn't know that you'd spent the evening in the hospital with the dead.
Oh yeah, listen, well, I mean, so I was struggling to play, then they arranged the game for me 3 weeks before, or 2 weeks before, and so to see if I was fit enough. So, and I think me and Craig Johnson, he had an ankle injury, and we both played against Chester or something, and we were fine. So, but I fell down tackling Platini within about, I think it was a minute and 10 seconds or something. I knew straight away my shoulder dislocated again. I think, SHIT, went off, and the doctor, the doc, God love him, we had 2 doctors, brothers, 2 Irish guys, and he was trying to put my arm back in, and apparently what they say is if within a couple of minutes, sometimes the arm will click back in, the shoulder will click back in, but it didn't, and then he had me swinging this milk carton. Honestly, I mean, when my book comes out, you can read it. But so the next thing was I went in an ambulance. The game's going on. I'm going to the hospital. And it wasn't like a normal ambulance that you would see now. It's like a kind of extended vehicle ambulance, low and everything like that. And I got in via the boot, and they kind of put me in backwards. It sounds stupid. And I was lying on a stretcher, but it was attached to this kind of big piece of metal thing, which obviously that extended to the boot. So when I got to the hospital, they reversed in. And it was a bit like, if you go on the motorway and you see these loading bays for Tesco's and Walmart and all those kind of things. Honestly, it was just like this. These shutters came up, right? And something came out of the building, and it connected to what I was lying on. And basically, and they just said, don't move. You haven't got to get up. Just stay there. Don't move anything. And basically, I was on like a mini conveyor belt, and it was straight into the operating theatre. They had my records and all that kind of stuff, and the guy was all gowned up, and he said, right, okay, dislocated shoulder. He said, we'll have to knock you out, obviously, and then, put it back in, and you'll be fine. I'm in my kit, I've got my boots on, the whole shebang, and I'm with the doc. And I woke up, and this is the frightening thing for me, I woke up, and I was never great when I had an operation with the stuff they knock you out with, and they put you. And I'm always like, I felt rough. Anyway, I woke up, and I still all my kit on, obviously my boots off, and I looked around, and I was in a ward. There was 24 beds, and I was the only person in there. And there was a guy from the army with this biggest machine gun you've ever seen in your life sat at the bottom of my bed. And I looked at him, and obviously I'm looking like SH1T, as I said, and I look at him, and he didn't speak any English. He just went, as in, just stay there. And he went and got the nurse and stuff like that. Oh, it was like unbelievable, yeah, what we went through.
Did you have any idea of the disaster that had unfolded before you got to the hospital?
Well, no, we knew. What happened was we got to, when we got to the game, we always got there unbelievably early. Listen, when on the way to the game, Juventus fans and Liverpool fans were playing on this piece of grass, like a little mini park thing, playing against each other at football. And you're thinking, it was a lovely warm night. You're thinking, this is all good. I mean, you had no idea what hell was about to happen and stuff. So, and before the game, we went out, and then all of a sudden we heard this commotion, and our dressing room was very, very close to where that end and where the wall collapsed. And then obviously that people realised that there was a major, major problem, and they stopped us going out. And of course, they're now saying, that the game's being delayed, the walls collapsed and all that. And of course, it's like Chinese whispers. And then you're hearing people going, oh, there's like, there's 5 dead, there's 10 dead, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going, crikey. And then the chief of police for Brussels came into the dressing room, and he said, this game goes ahead. And we went, there's a bunch of players. We went, no, we don't want to play. He said, no. He said, it's a safety issue. He said, and I've spoken to Juventus, and he said, it's a safety issue because, if all of a sudden I let everybody go with what's happened, he said, I cannot be responsible for what happened. He said, so we're playing, which was just weird. And I remember coming out to, obviously, and to line up and everything, and just thinking, it's absolutely ridiculous in many, many ways. And if you look, I've never ever seen a second of that game ever. I didn't even have a look at the pen, which the boys said it wasn't a pen from the goal. But I've never ever looked at a second of it, because you just think, how ridiculous was that? And I remember my mum would never go to big games ever, because she'd be there with her hands in front of her eyes and stuff like that. And my stepfather went with a friend of his, and when I spoke to him later on that night, he said because they had VIP tickets, obviously, because from the players, etc. That he said we walked past. He said it was like a little avenue thing, and he said it was just black body bags, and of course, they were thinking, because of the time, it was like, it was the IRA, it was this, it was whatever. It was just completely crazy.
In the hospital, when you woke up, did they bring the people from the stadium into the same room as you?
No, I'll tell you what happened. The nurse came in, spoke fab English and stuff, and she said, how you feeling? I'm all strapped up and everything like that. And I said, yeah, fine, because obviously, the effects were still with me. And I think she said, I'm pretty sure she made me a cup of tea and a piece of toast, which you do. But in the morning, the surgeon who sorted my shoulder out came in. He actually said to me, I can operate on this. And I said, it was already decided at Liverpool that when I got back to England, I was going to have an operation. And it's called putty plat, where you oversew one of the muscles and stuff, because it kept coming out. He said, I can do it for you. I could do it here. And I said, no. I said, I'm sorry, but I'll have to go home and stuff. And he said, there's one or two of the press want to speak to you. And probably a wrong decision. I said, yeah, okay. Well, the next thing is the World and his wife were in there. And of course, there was loads of Italians, and they were all, very, very challenging. And I was like, well, I'm like this, lying in the bed, half kind of awake and half not, asking me all these questions. And I couldn't really answer them, because they're just saying about, stuff like, did you know people had died? And that, well, we were told people had died, but it wasn't, Liverpool officials hadn't come in and told us, but we were told it had died, and all those kind of things. And I mean, and in the end, the guy, the surgeon, sort of said, look, he said, we need to get you out of here. And I said, well, yeah, great, go back to the hotel. And then we were flying home. But I had my kit. I had no civvies, no civilian clothes. So they said, all right, okay, we'll get in touch with the club. Anyway, Roy Evans turned up with my missus at the time, Vanessa. And they turned up, and he brought me a tracksuit. He brought me a Liverpool tracksuit, and I looked at him. You can imagine what I said. He was a friend of mine, as well as being one of the coaches ever. Just a great lad. And I said, why didn't you just bring me effing clothes? And he went, well, we just wanted to come and get you out as soon as possible. And he said, anyway, he says, tell you what we'll do. We'll reverse the tracksuit. We'll turn it inside out. So anyway, they sneaked me out of one of the lifts, one of the service lifts, and obviously got back to the hotel, and then we just went to the airport. But at the airport, we were spat on and everything. It just wasn't nice. The only thing was that they got us out of there in terms of the flight ASAP, but they were spitting on us, and they wrote on, all the skips that have all your kit, your dirty kit, your boots in, all that kind of stuff, and they wrote all kinds of stuff on them, obviously. about being killers and one thing and another. So, but that story's never ever really, as I said, it's never ever really come out at all, which I find really strange.
Yeah, well, I guess it's always, every civilization finds it difficult to address their own mistakes and
misdemeanors. Yeah,
but definitely it's worth having these conversations and excavating these memories and making sure that they are recorded. And look, thanks very much for being so honest with it, because obviously, I presume it's difficult enough for you to revisit that as well.
No, it's not. It's obviously time kind of doesn't heal completely. I mean, I don't get upset about it at all. It's just, I just really do think it's very, very strange that, and absolutely quite rightly, 100%. We always talk about Hillsborough and long may we do and everything, but we just do not ever talk about Heysel. Ever. I just find that really, really strange, especially now, the world that we live in. You'd think we talk about it more. I think someone's trying to make a documentary. In fact, I know they're trying to make a documentary because I got an email from the club the other week if I wanted to speak to someone. And to be honest with you, I've never replied. And I don't know why I've not replied. It's just one of them, probably because I'm just lazy and sat on my arse and thinking, I can't be bothered.
I think you should. I mean, I know.
Yeah, I do. I probably will. So, yeah.
Especially that story is amazing, and I'm sure there's loads of footage of all of that stuff too that would.
Oh, there's some. There's some unbelievable stories that, I mean, I could tell you a story. Not now's a probable time, but about a Juventus family. I think it was granddad, dad, uncle, and stuff, and they lost one of theirs, and it's just like, wow, it's just frightening.
Mark, it's always great talking to you. Thanks a million for making the time for us this morning.
Pleasure.
It's Mark Lawrenson giving us what we thought was just going to be chats about Liverpool's plans for the transfer market for the summer, but obviously we ended up on an important tangent there as well. You can give us your thoughts. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. The hashtag is OTB AM. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back talking rugby with Louise Galvin.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball.
Left foot a shot, low, and he scores! Luke Shaw makes it 2-0 to Manchester United with his first Premier League goal of the season. It's City 0, United 2 in the derby.
Manchester United will look to close the gap at the top of the Premier League to 8 points with a win at home to Burnley this Sunday. And we'll have full live commentary on Off the Ball. Brian Kerr and Nathan Murphy will call the action from Old Trafford from 4 o'clock. Arsenal versus Fulham is up first from half 1 with Stephen Doyle on duty. There'll be the paper review and reaction to Ireland's French test in the Women's Six Nations, all to come this Sunday on Off the Ball.
Off the Ball. Don't miss a moment of the action every weekend from 1 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Auto Mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Auto Mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's 23 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. You're very welcome if you've just joined us. You've missed a brilliant interview with Mark Lawrenson. We've talked about a lot of things there, and we've loads more to come on the show between now and 10 o'clock as well. But we want to turn our attention to rugby, and in particular Ireland's Six Nations game against France at the weekend. Before we do that, we want to talk a little bit about Simon Zebo. Louise Galvin is with us, and we just want to play everybody this video. It's Marissa Reedy shared this on Twitter yesterday. It's one of Zebo's biggest fans, hearing the news delivered by our own Stephen Doyle that he is indeed coming back to Munster and hopefully Ireland.
The Emirates has never sounded so good. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Afternoon, I'm Stephen Doyle. It's been confirmed Simon Zebo has signed a 1-year deal to return to play with Munster next.
Oh my God, no way!
Yes!
Yes!
A co-funded contract Could see some return.
Yay! I'm so excited.
He'll now be eligible to play for Ireland again ahead of the 2023 World Cup. Ilkay Gunn.
Yeah, so I presume that was the general reaction from a lot of Munster fans yesterday. Simon Zebo, by the way, has offered to bring mother and daughter to whatever game they want to, free of charge at any point over the next season. So that's all worked out very well for everybody.
Yeah, Marissa, Nora and her daughter will be delighted to have gotten that shout out and off the ball as well. And they're huge fans of Simon Zebo, and I know he's been very hospitable to them in the past when he's been at Munster and at Racing. But yeah, I think that's generally sums up the reaction of Munster fans, certainly. And I think the interesting thing is that the RFU are part funding the contract. So are we going to see Simon Zebo in an Irish jersey again? That's the real, I suppose, exciting question for not only Munster fans, but Irish fans in general.
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, I saw some people poo-pooing this. I'm like, what is wrong with people? I mean, Zebo has exactly the type of X factor. He's also a brilliant marketing tool. Like, you know, he's genuinely one of the most interesting rugby players that we've produced over the last decade or so. And the worst that'll happen is that he'll push all of the wingers to be better than they are at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. They get their tails up a bit. And we all know we've all been waxing lyrically about Hugo Keenan at full back. But the thing is, where's the depth? So do we know who our second best full back is? And as much as Hugo has a brilliant work ethic and he's doing really well, if he hits injury, if he hits a slump in form and feels no one's really pushing him for that 15 jersey, well, now certainly he is. You know, his eyebrows will be raised a little bit at Zebo returning and the RFU pushing it. So if all it adds to is competition, then it's obviously going to be a positive and a plus. And certainly for Munster, I think they definitely need that. I mean, if Zebo isn't going to be involved with the Irish squad, even to have him there week in, week out, to try and maybe bring back a little bit of what he's learned in France and that kind of style of jouer might, and you know, I'm sure Stephen Larkham's looking forward to having him back into that back line.
Yeah, I mean, famously, of course, Johan van Grant didn't pick him for a big European game, picked Alex Wootton ahead of him, and then ended up bringing Zebo on, and that was just at the end of his last period at Munster. So that'll be an interesting first conversation that the lads have, which I presume they'll get over pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's a few years ago. He's had 3 pretty successful seasons in Racing now. He's been generally picked week in, week out, and playing with some superstars there within the squad. So I don't think, you know, I think that'll be water under the bridge when he comes back in. There might be a little bit of a joke about it initially. You know, it would be a bit of a joke, but no, I think Zebo is going to be very excited. He's got a family there with him as well. He always, you know, if you follow his social media, he's always talking about Cork and Munster and coming back home again. So I'm sure it's not just a brilliant move for him, but for his family as well. And kind of like, you know, the opposite of CJ Stander, we have to look at these players not only as players and where they play, but holistically, you know, a happy player off the pitch and a happy wife, happy life, happy family. They have to keep them all content. And certainly he's always speaking about his life at home. So I think, you know, it's the right time for him. He's 31 to come back and still offer a lot and contribute a lot to this Munster squad.
And what we just saw in that video, that sort of stuff kind of matters as well, Louise, the way he has an ability to excite younger viewers to Munster Rugby. You don't want to like overstate it that he can attract new fans to the sport or anything like that, but he's a fan favourite amongst a whole cohort of people.
Yeah, and I guess, look, nowadays, we all know it, everyone is so media trained. Zebo is one of those rare lights that he is who he is, and you follow him for that bit of, I suppose, authenticity, and that, you know, he is his own identity. And that's really refreshing, and I think that's why he engages with a lot of the fans that way. And if you don't like it, then you can just tune out, that's fine. But we're so used to players being so media trained, and that's for a reason as well. A lot of them don't want to engage with that side of things. But Zebo is the opposite, and that makes him, you know, star quality off the pitch as well as on it.
I guess if Zebo comes back and plays for Ireland and plays well for Ireland, it almost rubber stamps David Nucifor's policy on players playing abroad, that, you know, you can do your time away from Ireland, but if you want to play for Ireland, you've got to come back, and maybe you'll come back a better player, but still, we're not picking you until you come back.
Yeah, look, for what Nucifor's trying to do there, he's obviously trying to protect the club game. He's trying to protect the youth in that they stay in Ireland and come up through the structures here. So that would be a suggestion that if he was to come back and play well, that this is done well. You know, he's gone away, he's brought something back. But at the same time, you could turn around and say, well, maybe in 2020, in 2019, when Rob Kearney was finishing his career, that we were lacking a 15 and we wouldn't look at Zibo because he was in France. And why can't we maybe use these players when they are playing abroad and in the thick of a completely different structure and system? So I think it would offer both arguments, really, Eoin.
I'm with you, Louise. I think that if Zibo comes back and tears up trees, we'll be like, why the hell did this guy not play for Ireland when we needed him? No?
Yeah, when he was 28 and 29,
yeah.
even
yeah.
maybe more in his physical prime. But again, you know, this is the structure that we have and the players know about it. And there's only the odd outlier that that gets away with it. And, you know, Donnacha Ryan is another player that when he went to Racing, I think he was underrated how important he was to that Irish setup. We didn't, you know, we weren't as blessed at the time with second rows as we are now. You know, it's probably not as missed now, but certainly when he left initially, I think he was a lot bigger for Ireland of a loss than people probably perceived.
I don't think that you can make the case that either Ryan or Zibo weren't missed at the World Cup. I think they both absolutely were, and combined, putting them both in the squad, I think would have had an impact at least. But Owen's just a shill for the IRFU, it turns out, these days. Louise, let's talk about Ireland and the game against France this weekend. The performance last week was exemplary. I mean, the second half probably they tailed off, but that's what happens when you're 40-odd points up and you're so dominant physically, tactically, at the set piece. It was a kind of massive coming out party in terms of the reputation of that team, because we haven't seen them essentially for 2 years at this point properly, and also haven't seen them playing good weather for a very long period of time. So this was a chance for us to see what the team is trying to do, and they're a really, really exciting team.
Yeah, it was really exciting. Really, really enjoyed the game. I think there's a few contributing factors. Like, obviously, they had a huge amount of time together because games kept getting postponed or cancelled. So they used that opportunity, obviously, to focus and to hammer home exactly what they wanted to do in a defence and attack. You mentioned the weather. It was a 4G pitch, so it allowed them to get that go-wide ball or get that go-forward ball and then hit out wide. We know they have a lot of talent out in the wings, but in previous years, we haven't really gotten to grips with giving our backline really good ball. Wales weren't great, you know, I think we can all admit that. They had very poor initially, very poor line speed. I mean, we were getting the ball to our open wingers' hands off first phase set piece, which France won't let us do this weekend unless we're playing with an incredible amount of depth. And on top of that, you know, I think an interesting thing is having Hannah at 10. I think she played really well, but Hannah's played all of her 15s rugby up until the last two caps as a full-back and as a winger. So she knows that feeling of being completely open out in the tram lines and it not coming out. And I know normally 10s are aware of this, but when you're in that position and you see it for so long, and she knows the talent that we have out there, that crossfield kick, I mean, in fairness to go for that, we weren't at penalty advantage. Okay, we were pretty comfortable in the game and we'd already had maybe 2 tries 10 minutes in. But to go for that when it's not penalty advantage, that's someone who A, backs her skills and knows she has it, and B, backs her back three, because both Emer and Bevan were lining up to convert that score. There's not too many 10s that will go for that, not on penalty advantage. So fair play to her. And I think the fact that she has that back three experience and knows that when it's on, is another reason why we got ball wide so early. But we're going to see a completely different game, I think, this weekend. We're not going to have so much time on the ball. France is going to be a lot more physical and have a lot more line speed.
Looking back at recent results against France, they've beaten us pretty handily in the last 3 or 4 times that we've played them, all the way back to 2018. Obviously, we didn't play them last year, and so it's hard to know exactly where we are versus where they are. They have a kind of semi-pro approach to the women's international team. We're a little bit behind that at the moment. Obviously, some of our players are sevens crossovers too. So, like, what should we expect? What's realistic this weekend?
Yeah, and even to back up, France are semi-pro, but their club structure is very strong. It would be a lot stronger than what we have here in AIL. So when they're not with the national squad, they're with I suppose quite a good setup as well. It's going to be a very difficult game, but the sound bites coming out of the squad is that they're really talking themselves up in a good way. We're not beaten before we take to the field at all, and there's certainly a lot of speak of even trying to make Donnybrook a fortress. So I'm expecting a really tight game, but to be disappointed with the loss wouldn't be right either, because France at the moment, looking at where we are, different trajectories. They are doing quite well. We've had a really good performance against Wales, but a poor enough Welsh team that are having their own issues, their own problems at the moment. It's hard. You can only beat what's put in front of you, but it's hard to really gauge yourself off the best until it comes to this weekend. I think a few things going in our favour is obviously being at home. The fact that it's on a 4G surface again means that we can play that type of expansive game that we played last week, but also France can play that way, and we know they love to jouer. I think we're more of a settled team, so initially France would have included some of their sevens players in their Six Nations squad, but then they had a tournament in Dubai 2-3 weeks ago. So they have reintroduced 4 players since the Welsh game. So where they slot in, plus even in that Welsh game, they didn't start a lot of their experienced players like Marjorie Mayan, Safi Ndiaye. They were on the bench, Jessie Chimoulier. So are we going to see a whole change compared to that team that took the field against Wales, which for them could be a negative. They're not as settled. I expect our girls, having played last week, we didn't pick up too many injuries. I expect us to be a bit more of a settled outfit taken to the field. So there's a lot there to suggest this is going to be a really close game, but we can't play that expansive rugby until we win the set piece and until we win the physicality battle up front. And that's going to be really, really tough.
I guess the optimistic outlook going into last weekend, Louise, was that with all the time off, Ireland had managed to fine-tune a few things, maybe in the set piece that could have looked a little bit better as a result of having a lot of time off. And it did against Wales, even though you're not coming up against as good opposition as you are this weekend. Is your sense that you can take real things from last weekend when it comes to the set piece, that they have used all that training time, all that time off to actually improve tangibly in that area?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, we know Wales weren't really at the races, but to see the scrum, how dominant it was, driving over their put-in, to see the line-out function so well, and, you know, Clean and Maloney hitting the tail plenty of occasions, and how even beyond the line-out itself, how we use some nice, like, hitting Junior in the middle of the field, tip on to Dorothy Wall, some massive carry in second phase. We're playing open in the back line, we're getting really good front foot ball. It's not just the actual set piece of the line-out itself, but how the team I suppose plays off of that good platform. It's really encouraging. They've certainly used the time to focus, and I think there's a real sense as well of I suppose community and togetherness within the squad. I think it's really palpable, both from the girls, from the way they're playing, but also just picking up the little sound bites coming out of camp, talking to the girls. It sounds like they're a really, really unified squad. There's a lot of people pushing for places. There's a lot of players who didn't even play, weren't on the 23, who you'd be quite happy to see them take the field. So all in all, we're in a really good place, and you can just feel the excitement for the game this weekend. But we'll know a lot more after this weekend about where the girls are really at. On
a macro level, the opportunity that this team has now to capture the country's imagination with the star power of a teenager scoring tries and kind of having that impact on TV, that loads of people are watching, the comparisons with O'Driscoll and the hat-trick in Paris, that kind of stuff. People are making those, and it's I understand why people are making them. The difference between where this team is versus their competition is going to be very important over the next couple of years, so that we don't completely lose touch with the fully professional setup in England. With COVID, we've already seen there's job losses in the IRFU, and they're battening down the hatches to try and survive this very difficult period. What do you hope in terms of the IRFU's investment in the women's team at the moment, and what is the size of the opportunity in your view at the moment?
Yeah, look, at the moment, the girls are elite amateurs. They put in an awful lot of time. And in fairness, when they get access to high performance camp, everything from that point of view is spot on. But at the end of the day, they have to go back, they have to do their day job. They're not getting that rest time and recovery. It is very difficult to look for and to be looking for, I suppose, extra money when you see people losing their job within the RFU. I'd take that 100% to hand. But if the long-term strategy and the long-term goal is that we want the Irish women's squad, not only just qualifying for World Cups, but competing for medals at World Cups, for competing for Six Nations championships, then this has to be in the offing down the road. It's a difficult conversation. I know from the Seven squad, it's not you're not on huge money at all. It's I'm not sure if you'd even call it livable. And usually with the Sevens players, they tend to be younger age profiles. So a lot of them are coming out of college, whereas your 15s players, the likes of Bevan Parsons, Dorothy Wall aside, who are now in the Sevens programme as well, you're talking about paying mortgages and that. So there's a whole lot of, it's just a huge headache. But to stay in touch, from not only, from, if we want to be the best of the rest, fine, stay with the way we are. But if we actually really want to compete, if we want to grow the game, I know the IRFU, they're talking about trying to get more players playing, and that's the main point of their women's strategy. But a huge point of that is visibility of girls actually within the squad performing, playing full time, of that being a goal that they could potentially be that person as well someday. So there has to be some sort of a long-term strategy post-COVID that we get off the ground, and we get as some sort of a professionalism or semi-professionalism, and whether that involves, even like in the Premier 15s, they use a lot of companies to try and support players in the English club scene, like whether we look at that sort of a player being supported by a private company and then offering something back to that private company, as well as being on a kind of a baseline RFU contract. Yeah. I mean, there's different ways of looking at it besides the RFU just handing over a whole ball of money, but it has to come down the line if we want to win Six Nations championships and if we want to really compete at World Cups.
Well, there'll be a public clamour for it if they keep playing the way they are, and that's them holding up their side of the bargain, and we hope that the IRFU and indeed big sponsors get behind them and support them as individuals and then as the team as well. Louise, always great to talk to you. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys.
It's Louise Galvin giving us some thoughts ahead of Ireland against France this weekend. Of course, we'll have updates on it as it happens, indeed on Saturday afternoon. John Duggan, how are you?
Jerry, Owen, good morning.
What's going on?
Well, I think we should get some life lessons to start off this slot from the Masters runner-up, Will Zalatoris.
The Owen Wilson comparison, the Happy Gilmore comparison, or Happy Gilmore's caddy comparison. Butch saying I look like a one iron without a grip on it. I think it's hilarious. I mean, you got to embrace it. I think it's fun. I mean, hey, this is. It's entertainment. This is obviously the really fun side of the job is, it's, trust me, a year ago, if you said that Adam Sandler was going to send out a tweet about me, I would have thought you were on something, but it's fun. There's so many funny comparisons that I've gotten, and that's like, I'm putting all the comparisons on my wedges. I put the Wow Owen Wilson one on one of my wedges. I put Mr. Gilmore and McCaddy on one. I just got a new 60 that I said, you look like a one iron without a grip on it. So you got to have some fun out here. I mean, we're playing golf. You don't need to take this job too seriously.
Refreshing stuff.
I think the name helps. I'm not going to lie. I think the name helps. It's like, okay, there's something's going to happen here. They've got this character from Central Casting, and what's going to happen?
He's Miami Vice. He's swagger. You can imagine the kind of the jackets, can't you? Those cool pastel colours, and he'd be in a cop show. Absolutely, Will Zalatoris, and he's just a cold, ice cold killer, but with a smile on his face. And this guy's going to be a star. I think it was great to see.
Oh, and what were the name of the detectives in Miami Vice?
Let me come up with something.
Crappy quiz. Crockett and Tubbs, Owen.
Was that it? Wow, that's absolutely horrific name for detectives. I was just going to say that, big up Will Zalatoris for repping people who aren't as muscularly gifted as Bryson DeChambeau or Brooks Koepka. It was a proud moment for us watching Will Zalatoris at the weekend, that the gym isn't necessarily the first stop before you hit a golf course and be good on the golf course. I'm proud of Mr. Zalatoris.
He's an everyman we can all get behind. Okay, this is Virtual Insanity. John, how are you getting on?
Good, yeah. $5 profit on the year. I don't know how we get enough for a pimento sandwich at Augusta if we ever get there.
This is the roller coaster ride, though. It's been like very, very close to being massive, and then Spieth wins, and then unfortunately the Masters did not go your way.
No, it didn't. So there's two ways you look at it in life. You can either keep the faith, or you can do the same thing over and over again and be the definition of insanity and expect different results.
What's the segment called?
Virtual Insanity.
There you go.
So Patrick Cantlay was an absolute shocker of a tip last week, but I'm keeping the faith in Patrick Cantlay. I'm sticking with Patrick Cantlay for the heritage, which starts at noon, because he's been 3rd, 7th and 3rd. If he's got anything within himself, he'll want to atone for disappointing all the followers of Virtual Insanity last week. He'll want to do that at 18-1. I actually think this could be a really good value bet. for 4 each way for Patrick Cantlay, who was one of the best players in the world. Everybody's written him off, but I don't think life goes like that. I think 4 times in the last decade you've had players missing the cut at the Masters and coming and winning this tournament a week later, including Graham McDowell. So Patrick Cantlay, I'm keeping the faith. If he doesn't do it this week, obviously he's going to disappear off the roster for a while, but I'm not giving up on him. So that might be stupid, but okay, we'll see how it goes with that.
It's on brand, virtual insanity, JD. That's all I'm going to say.
Exactly, yeah. So we have to keep that on. We have to keep those things when we go for the massive marketing campaign. The second golfer is Christian Bezuidenhout of South Africa, 60 to 1 for 3 each way. Is the top player statistically in America around the greens. Not the longest hitter. Will have loved being at the Masters last week just for the thrill of it, because it's still a novelty for him. But last year he had 4 rounds in the 60s in this at the Heritage, and he likes the course. He even said that yesterday on his Instagram page that he enjoys it. I think he's overpriced to 60 to 1. Bezuidenhout to go in the top 8. The other ones, JT Poston has been 6th and 8th on his 2 appearances, so he obviously likes South Carolina, the course there, the Heritage. 3 top 25s this year. He's won in North Carolina, the neighbouring state, JT Poston at 90 to 1 for 2 each way. And then I don't know how Doug Ghim and Doc Redman both feel about Zalatoris, because Doug Ghim in 2017 played alongside Zalatoris in the Walker Cup team for the USA. Scotty Scheffler and Morikawa, they were also on it. A really amazing team when you look back, when you think about it. Doug Ghim is contended in the Players, contended in the Bay Hill. He's 125 to 1 for 2 each way. Doc Redman beat Doug Ghim in the 2017 Amateur. Played well in Texas, I noticed that, for Doc Redman for 2 each way at 125 to 1 as well. So Doc Redman, Doug Ghim, JT Poston, Bezuidenhout, and the main one this week is Patrick Cantlay, keeping the faith on him each way. So
Cantlay's about 16 to 1, is he?
18s, yeah, 16s, 18s.
Okay.
Yeah, if you shop around.
Yeah, and the rest of them are all quite long odds this week. There's no one kind of in the middle.
And also think about it, Patrick Cantlay was 22 to 1, 25 to 1 in a much stronger field last week. This week, like Spieth the week before in Texas, Spieth was in a much weaker field and was the same price as he was at the Masters. Cantlay's in a weaker field this week, where he's been 3 times in the top 7 and 3 appearances. If you forgive him last week, he could be a value bet. Just where his head is at. But there is value, like even Graham McDowell is a massive price for a player who's won the tournament before. So I like Dustin Johnson, I don't think the course suits him. Zalatoris, you'd have to think, is knackered after last week, even emotionally. You have a lot of English players like Fitzpatrick, Hatton and that, but I just can't be picking everyone.
I'm just giving a small mention for Troy Merritt, who is, of course, a friend of the pod. 250 to 1 outright. He's 125 to 1 if you shop around to be leader after the first round, and that's each way 6 places for the first round leader. So he is somebody who has the game for this, but obviously just isn't playing particularly brilliantly at the moment. And if you want more from Troy Merritt, you can get it on Golf Weekly, which you can subscribe to, patreon.com/Golf Weekly. Or, of course, otbsports.com/Golf Weekly for all the details and the pricing around that as well. So that's this week's Virtual Insanity. You can check it out on the OTB Sports app and on otbsports.com. What's going on in the news, JD?
Just Troy Merritt, he shares the course record at Harbour Town. So there you go. He's got good form around the course. So I wouldn't put anybody off what you're saying there, Ger. Well, Liverpool, the attention now turning to the Premier League after their Champions League exit last night. So they're 3 points off West Ham. They got 7 games to do it to get into the top 4. Goalless draw, missed a few chances. Real weathered the storm. 3-1 they go through to play Chelsea on aggregate. So you've got Abramovich versus the state of Real Madrid versus the 2 oil states, PSG and Manchester City. So Manchester City beating Dortmund 2-1. Bit nervy for a while after Bellingham's goal. The yellow wall was up, but Emre Can gave away the penalty. That was scored by Mahrez, and then Foden knocked in the second goal. 4-2 on aggregate for Manchester City. Tonight, Arsenal and Man United in the Europa League. United 2-0 up against Granada. That's a done deal. Arsenal, though, 1-1 against Slavia Prague going into their second leg. That'll be nervy for them because it's their only chance, really, of getting into the Champions League next season. What else is going on? We got Shane Lowry and McDowell in that Heritage tournament today. The Irish team for the game against France in the Women's Six Nations in association with Guinness being named by Adam Griggs a little bit later on. And an 8-race card at Limerick today at 5-2.
All right, good stuff, JD. Thanks very much for that. More from John, of course, over the course of the day on otbsports.com and on Saturday afternoons on Off the Ball on News Talk. We're going to be back with a deep dive on the latest motor doping suspicions in cycling. First, here's Stewie Byrne talking Champions League on last night's show.
Hey, Joe.
Are you watching any of the games this evening?
I'm not. No, I'm not. I don't... I'm sort of on a bit of a sabbatical from all this overhyped stuff, to be quite honest with you.
Sorry, the Champions League knockout stages are not overhyped.
I'm sticking to domestic game for the foreseeable future. I just can't. I can't deal with all the sort of. It is overhyped. I think it's overhyped.
Champions League knockout stages, Stu, is as good as football gets. Premier League overhyped all day long. I'm with you. Champions League knockout stages is, for a lover of the beautiful game like yourself, is where it's at.
Yeah. It is, yeah, but I know I'm going through one of them stages now where I'm sort of fighting with myself, with I'm trying to. I've actually just been watching. This is totally off topic, but Seaspiracy. It's a documentary on Netflix about fishing.
Yeah, I hear you won't eat your
amazing
your salmon of a Friday with this clean conscience.
It's not that extreme, but I think what it's I'm certainly starting to question a lot of things, put it that way, around me. And soccer in this country is in my crosshairs.
Okay.
Sorry to burst your bubble, Joe. I know your phone is going dead and all. Like, maybe actually a little bit of time to yourself will just might be the ticket.
Be an absolutely dreadful idea. Time with myself.
All right, well, great stuff from Stewie Byrne. I have not seen Seaspiracy. We must talk about it in our TV section there. What's your take on that, Eoin, before we get into our next lot?
Yeah, wow, it's amazing. I must actually go back and listen to the full thing. So did Stewie just not react to the Champions League as it happened last night? In fairness, it wasn't a classic night of Champions League, so it wasn't the worst time to let that take float. But on Seaspiracy, I haven't seen it yet, and I'm very afraid of watching it. I do love to eat fish. Well,
you could just get, you live on the north side of Dublin, you could just get stuff off the boats that's coming from the local sea. We should all be doing that. We live on an island, we should all be eating way more fish. It's a phenomenal source of goodness in our lives. And if we supported all our local fishermen and all bought a little bit more fish, local fish, sustainably farmed or sustainably caught fish rather, then life will be better for everybody on this island. But for some reason, we insist on not doing that and eating stuff out of season. And I don't even know what the seasons are. No one kind of really has thought to explain to us all, this month you eat this fish, this month you eat this fish, this month you eat this fish, here's how you cook it. It takes 3 minutes, a little quick flick in the pan, a little bit of butter, Irish butter. What could be wrong with this? What's wrong with this? Why don't we do a bit more of it?
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing little segment here. Just release the fish rota, people. Release the fish.
That's what I say. It's 8:52 this morning. We're moving on. We've got to release something else here. I don't know where that came from. If you want to get in touch, if you got any good fish recipes for us this morning, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Of course, the hashtag is OTB AM. I had my double espresso this morning at 7:27. It's obviously still kicking in at 8:52. Eoin, what the hell are we doing here? Where are we going? It's motor doping.
Yeah, probably a little bit better than a double espresso for you is having an actual motor in your bike if you were cycling. And Jean-Pierre Verdy is a name you might have heard this week. He was the founder and he was the director of the French anti-doping agency between 2006 and 2015. And he's got a new book out. It's called Dopage, ma guerre contre le tricheur, which to you and me is doping, my war against cheaters. So speaking on Stade 2 this week, he said, Lance Armstrong, I believe he had a motor in the bike. I still have the images in my head of a mountain stage where everyone is collecting themselves and he leaves everyone on the ground. At the end of the stage, I call all the specialists I know and they don't understand how this performance is possible, even with EPO. There was something wrong and all the specialists were telling me the same thing. It was not the EPO that made the difference. So when it comes to these allegations of mechanical doping, they're not necessarily new, but it does seem that there is plenty of split opinion on the subject. So on the one hand, you have people who have watched the videos on YouTube, videos of Fabian Cancellara, for example, at the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix in 2010, where his wheel keeps spinning when he falls off the bike. You've got people who are suspicious of Froome on Ventoux in 2015. And then, of course, you have people who are suspicious of Lance, that he had a little bit more than just EPO and a little bit more than blood doping. But then in the other corner, you have people who will reasonably question the presence of motor doping because it all sounds very conspiratorial. Show us the evidence on Lance, show us the evidence on Froome and Cancellara is what they would say. And they would be right on one level, except the fact that there has actually been a case of motor doping. It is not entirely pie in the sky. So let's go back through this morning and go through the actual facts that we have. And to 2016 is where we go, the one proven case we have in cycling. This was the situation surrounding Femke van den Driessen and the discovery of a concealed electric motor in her bike at the Women's Under-23 Cyclocross World Championships. So let's take a look at some of this footage from January 2016. So keep an eye on Van den Driessen on the right-hand side of your screen. She's wearing number 10.
Number 10,
look,
yellow helmet,
yeah, look at her cadence, the fact that she's sitting down, looking pretty comfortable, climbing ahead of her competitors, many of whom are clearly working very hard. Some of them are even out of their saddles. They're going up a climb at the moment. Now, this bike was scanned using magnetic resonance testing, and it detected a motor while the bike was in the rider's
Wow, look at that.
area.
She's amazing. That's absolutely incredible. She's killing them. How is she doing it, Eoin?
With, well, she used a motor called a Vivax, which is a company I think that's actually gone bust as a result of the pandemic. It was concealed along with a battery in the seat tube. It was controlled with a Bluetooth switch installed underneath the handlebar tape. If you go on YouTube and look at that full thing, if you go about 45 minutes into that video, I think you can see her maybe fiddling with the gears in a way that doesn't look like she's fiddling with the gears, if you know what I mean. So she ended up getting a 6-year ban for that, but it was quite a rudimentary form of motor doping. It has evolved quite a bit over the last couple of years. But the question is, if somebody was willing to mechanically dope at an under-23 World Championships, then surely it is totally plausible for the incentive to be there when it comes to a Grand Tour. Could, for example, the most famous cyclist of all time, the most famous cheater of all time, have ever used a motor? Well, let us give ourselves a reminder of what happened when he was asked if he had ever used a motor by one Ger Gilroy.
Absolutely not.
And did you ever consider using a motor for your bike?
Of course not.
Well, this is interesting, right? Because it's degrees of, like, what's the difference between using the best EPO and using a motor? I'm kind of interested because we're hearing that the motors and mechanical doping is something that there's a big story brewing, something's going to break. And, you know, it would be very interesting to hear, like, you guys were the best and you were determined to win from 99 onwards. And it's around this time we think that the Hungarian inventor starts to offer people stuff. And if I was in possession of a motor, the first person I would go to would be you and say, here, listen, what do you think?
Okay. And your point?
Did you ever use a motor?
Absolutely. I just told you, absolutely not.
And as a matter of interest, why? Like, what's the difference between doing that and taking EPO?
Gare, what are you? Are you a complete rookie? What are you? I mean, in 1999, nobody even knew you could put motors were for motorcycles. What do you? I mean, are you out of your mind?
No, look. I
mean, honestly, seriously. I mean, first of all, I know that that's topical. I know that there has been a rider caught with a motorcycle or with a motor in their bike. But what? I mean, are you crazy?
No, I'm just talking to people who are saying that there's a big story about motors coming, and I'm interested to get your perspective on it and see if anybody ever offered you one. But obviously,
right, and I answered that, and the answer is no.
Okay.
That was in our pre-video days, by the way, so that's going to be repeated on OTB Gold tonight from 6 o'clock on the OTB Sports app, that full interview. So Lance, they're basically bristling at the idea of anybody knowing that you could put a motor in a bike in the late 90s. So a week after that conversation, we questioned that on Off the Ball, and we got on that Hungarian inventor, István Farkas, who gave Jared this timeline of things.
This one, the first prototype, being sold in 98, the end of 98.
In 1998? Yeah.
Yes, 1998, and I had to stay quiet until 2009 for 10 years. It was a time for sleeping 10 years. And after, in 2009, I normally went to offering to big bicycle companies to make it in a public use.
Okay, so sorry, just to clarify, the first prototype was available in 1998, and that worked. And we won't pry too much about the details of maybe your customers.
Yes, this one it was the first generation of this kind of motors, because this motors came from the military application. That time was able to miniaturizing with so powerful magnets. This motor became very small. You can put in any place. So it's as soon you have a construction, you can put it in any kind of bicycle. It's not a problem. It's just a matter of budget.
So that's the voice of Hungarian inventor István Vargas. Remember his name, we'll come back to him in a moment. But he basically confirmed there that a prototype of his motor came along in 1998. There was a militarization of it in Hungary, and he managed to mass produce it. But he had to sign an NDA in 1998. He had signed exclusivity and couldn't work with anyone else. He had to shut up, go to sleep, as he said, until 2009. Now, in that same interview, Vargas confirmed to us that he knew Michele Ferrari, the infamous doping doctor who had worked with Lance Armstrong. Vargas said that Ferrari was interested in the motors for training purposes, for lighter days, going up mountains, for non-riders, for non-professionals to go up the mountains and help form a peloton, I guess, on a higher altitude. And then some time after that, we also spoke to Tyler Hamilton, former teammate of Lance Armstrong, and here's what he had to say on the subject of motors.
Oh, yeah. Do you think it's credible that there has been in the past the use of motors in the biggest stage races in the world, in the Tour de France? Is it something that you think could have happened?
I think it could have happened. I think it could have. You know, after I did a little interview with 60 Minutes, and they showed me what it's all about and how small and inconspicuous it could be. I was surprised.
Were you?
I mean, when I was a cyclist, I never had heard about it. And then all of a sudden, you know, in I think 2008, 2009, you started hearing about it. And there were certain videos out there that looked pretty interesting.
Yeah, and there's loads more. Now that the stuff on YouTube comes up, you're like, well, hang on a second.
Yeah, there's some stuff that makes you definitely scratch your head. And there's been a rider or two that have been caught. So,
yeah.
Yeah. From what I've heard I do have a few inside sources, and from what I've heard, yeah, it's been used at the biggest races in the world.
Yeah.
By big riders.
Yeah, so Tyler Hamilton mentions that 60 Minutes show that CBS did a few years ago, and on that show, our Hungarian friend István Vargas claimed that on the day before the 2015 Tour de France started, he had delivered motorized bikes to a locked storage room somewhere in France. Our friend Jean-Pierre Verdi, this is the guy with the new book, he was also on that show, and he said he had sources in the pro peloton that a dozen riders had used motors during the 2015 Tour de France. Now, there was no suggestion that Team Sky were connected to this at all, but they did come out to deny ever using motorized bikes around the time of those allegations. So in amongst the theories, what investigations have we seen? Because these are pretty serious allegations that as recently as in the Tour de France 6 years ago, there was fairly widespread motorized doping going on. So after that bust of the Belgian rider in 2016 in the Under-23s Championship, the National Financial Prosecutor's Office in France started to dig into this situation, but it wrapped up last year. So they'd been going for 4 years until the summer of 2020, and it found no further evidence. There was a couple of amateur riders here and there, but nothing in the professional ranks. Then there was also this in Velo News. The PNF's investigation included questioning the claimed inventor of the miniature motors that there could be installed in a bike frame, István Vargas. They also reached out to senior officials at the UCI, only to receive no input from several former members of the governing body. And Velo News also said last year that the UCI trialled various methods of checking for motorised bikes in the years after the Van den Driessen case, only to abandon them due to defective technology and misleading results. And this misleading results is quite embarrassing because at the 2018 Tour de France, they had started to use thermal imaging, X-ray scanning and bike tagging, and a thermal device picked up a burst of energy from a rider's pedals at the event, but it turned out to be a false alarm caused by a mechanical defect. So there's been a number of setbacks here, a number of frankly humiliating moments in the battle against mechanical doping. And then last year, when that investigation wrapped up, former professional Jean-Christophe Perrault lost his role as UCI manager of equipment because the probe closed, obviously. He was appointed 3 years previously to lead the fight against technological fraud. The UCI claimed he was dismissed because of the financial difficulties caused by the COVID pandemic. So he's lost his role. Who is the manager of equipment? Who is leading the fight against technological fraud? It's unclear what the UCI's next step in this is. The rumours and conjecture are going nowhere, and if this is an actual battle against mechanical doping, the UCI are losing pretty comprehensively at the moment.
All right, good stuff, Eoin. Thanks very much for that. It's worth digging out the 60 Minutes interview on YouTube, by the way, because they actually take the little motor that Vargas created and they put it in one of the old bikes that Tyler Hamilton would have been using, and then they put him on the bike and he presses the button on it and it's like zoom. He's like, wow, this is amazing. So Tyler Hamilton obviously knows exactly what the impact of EPO is, because he took EPO very successfully for a period of time before getting caught, and so could compare and contrast the difference between what it felt like to be on EPO and also what it felt like to be on a bike. And he had one of his old bikes from when he was riding in the Tour de France, when of course he was a domestique for Lance Armstrong. So you know that you get to see exactly if this would have been possible, if it could have worked. Now look, you pays your money, you take your choice. I still think it's like an interesting question, an interesting philosophical question. What's the difference between juicing and putting a motor in your bike? When you make the decision to cheat, you make the decision to cheat. What's the difference? If you're going to cheat a little bit, and you want to be the best cheater, you may as well be the best cheater. Anyway, that would be... I'd love to get that philosophical debate teased out with Lance Armstrong now and say, if we go back to 98 and I'm saying, here's all the dope you can have and here's a little motor, are you saying no to the motor but yes to the dope? What's the mental gymnastics you do in your head to give yourself the freedom not to take this, but to ingest and inject and however like horse the drugs into you?
It is a really fascinating question, and that to say that Tyler Hamilton was more receptive to your line of questioning than Lance Armstrong was is a bit of an understatement. But like, we did ask that of Tyler when he was in studio that time, and he was pretty blunt about saying, no, I would not motor dope, absolutely not. Yeah, I'd blood doped and I would dope, but I would not motor dope.
It's a mafioso-style code of honour, you know, like for a long period of time, the mafia wouldn't deal drugs. But then we know loads of them did. That's the thing. It's like, oh, you know, you never shoot a civilian, but then a lot of them did. It's like, but it was interesting, like, you know, and Tyler, for him, that was a line.
Yeah.
And maybe for lots of bike riders, there is a line, and maybe for Lance there was a line too, and that's a line he didn't cross. It'll be interesting to see if this story goes anywhere or if this is the end of it now. Particularly, the UCI don't seem to care about it that much, is essentially the conclusion from our piece there. Again, let's wait and see if anything post-COVID happens. 6 minutes past 9 this morning here. If you want to get in touch with us, you can WhatsApp us, 0879 180 180, or of course, you can use the hashtag OTB AM on Twitter. @OffTheBallAM is the specific Twitter account for the breakfast show here from OTB. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're going to be back with this morning's back pages. We'll be talking TV next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Women's Six Nations is here, and OTB Sports is your one-stop shop for all the best coverage, analysis and opinion.
As Ireland take on Wales and France to decide their position on finals day, we will bring you a special weekly Six Nations show with some of the great names of the game, as well as special interviews with Irish legends Sophie Spence and Rosie Foley.
With reporters at the games, all the latest team news, match previews and much, much more. Check out otbsports.com/Women's Six Nations.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
Tom Watson, you're welcome to Golf Weekly.
Hey, this is going to be fun.
Very happy to say European captain and, of course, three-time major winner Padraig Carrington joins us.
Today's special guest on Golf Weekly is Lee Westwood.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm honoured and delighted.
Let's bring in Paul McGinley, who joins us now. Paul, you're very welcome.
Shane Lowry, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks, yeah. Well, I'm as good as I can be.
The biggest names in golf and Ireland's best golf podcast, Golf Weekly, now exclusively available on Patreon. Go to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly to sign up now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It is 8 minutes past 9 this morning. I'm going to run you through the sports pages before we get into our TV slot. And a reminder, of course, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Phil Foden was not happy with social media team's tweet post-match. Don't wake the beast. Ukraine versus Northern Ireland had one of the great red cards. That's the video that's gone viral. Millions and millions of video views for proper old-school shithousery from Ukraine. Zebo returns Keith Wood and Andy Dunn on whether he'll succeed. And Real Madrid coach window smashed by fans on the way to Anfield. Didn't really have any impact. It in the end. They've managed to go through. Very quickly, going to run you through the back pages of the papers. Back page of the Irish Independent this morning. Klopp rues massive chances missed, and so he should. McGinley fears for Irish Open with players unable to commit due to travel restrictions. They're going to need to give the elite exemptions to golfers and everybody involved with the backroom of the whole putting on of the Irish Open. Otherwise, players won't come, and that event is actually at risk of being cancelled. Croke Park say water breaks to stay despite opposition. I'm not sure about the water break zone. I don't know if they're actually in the spirit of an invasion game like ours, where there are no timeouts and there is no pre-planned moves and there is no set piece, essentially. It kind of creates this weird hybrid. Who was on recently saying, why don't they just switch to an old ball? We may as well play Aussie rules.
Jim Gavin, was that?
Oh, it was, yeah. It was Jim Gavin on the Aum Shaw AC/DC podcast.
Yeah, I presume that the water breaks are only there because of COVID, and you can't you can't share water bottles and all that, so you have to go over to your
JCDC. I better correct that there. Go on. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to go over to your own water bottle. It is frustrating because it actually is not detrimental. That's a bit strong, but it does hold back the game a little bit. It does make the game a little bit worse. But if it's the only way a player can stay hydrated, then so be it, I think.
There's probably other ways around that if they wanted to. Irish Daily Mail says it's all over. Wasteful Reds crash out, but City march on. And great news as Munster welcome Zebo home. Cop End is the headline in the back of the Star. It's a decent headline as well. And then Zebo is smiles better. And the top of that one is Potches next up for Pep. Feels so good. Foden keeps Pep on target for quadruple. United's ridiculous excuse. We haven't talked about this morning. They talked about it last night. Man United are back to moaning about colour clashes 25 years after their infamous shirt change against Southampton. Solskjaer has temporary red banners in the Old Trafford stands have been changed to black in a bid to make his players stand out more. Sure, look, whatever it takes. Real sad, real glad is the two headlines there. You can see what they've done. Farce, Kudela appeals race wrap while Kamara is banned. Arteta, I haven't thought about failure tonight. Agony and ecstasy is the headline on the Telegraph. So essentially the themes are all fairly similar. Zebo return to Munster can be a win-win for both sides, says O'Gara. Poole can't find required perfection, and time for a reset to Klopp's red machine. I don't know. Is it time for a reset? Or the more I speak to the former players in Souness and Lawrenson, the more convinced I am that actually an off-season, a bit of rest, the return from injury, and some supplementation of the existing playing stock will have Liverpool back competing for the title next season.
Yeah, and they have already reportedly gone out and made massive headway in getting Ibrahima Konate to the club. That was obviously reported at the end of last month, and whether or not that'll bolster things remains to be seen. But Lawrence makes a good point earlier on that you've got Gomez and Matip to come back alongside Van Dijk as well. Now I think with Matip, he's probably got so many injuries at this point that you have to file him under injury prone, whereas with Gomez and Van Dijk you might have a lot more hope once they get back that they'll stay back. And that'll make a transformative difference to everything, because then you were kind of crossing your fingers a little bit for sure. But if Fabinho and Henderson manage to stay fit for the majority of next season, then you're in a really good position, because it is in that situation that you expect someone like Thiago to thrive. Like, the difficult second season, I don't think is always a thing. I think it's certainly not a thing when somebody's gone through a difficult first season. And I think Thiago is somebody that people will have their eye on next season as somebody who can really make a step forward for Liverpool. Like, I think a lot of Liverpool fans might have written off Naby Keita at this point after his performance in the first leg against Real Madrid, and somebody who might not get his career back on track. But there's enough in that squad for Liverpool to give City a run for their money next season, without question. The problem is City might end up moving forward again. Like, are we reading the conversation between Foden and Haaland last night as a future teammates conversation? Are we saying that City are front runners there? Because if so, then it's going to be hard to make a case that anybody will be able to challenge with City next season once again, because the turnover that they've had in a positive sense over the last season has been amazing. Like, I mean, obviously the new signings like Ruben Dias have been transformative, But John Stones, Joao Cancelo, Phil Foden stepping up, they've all been really positive things for City this season. And you don't want to use the cliche like new signings, but they kind of have been.
Yeah.
And in a pandemic, they've done well within their own massive resources anyway.
Yeah, well, it has suggested that the short blip that City had was a blip as opposed to a proper interruption of the greatness that we'd seen from them over the previous seasons, and they've transitioned to a largely new team very seamlessly over the last 12 months now since the pandemic. And you can see, I mean, it's not that new team, there's still very key players who were key at the start, but the leadership group has had significant supplementation. And I don't know, I guess we all want Liverpool to come back next season, because if it is going to be a 4 or 5 year period of one team winning the league by 10 points in March, then that's not good for anybody. And that's the other side of the multi-billion-dollar companies or countries owning these football teams, is that it skews competition. Liverpool left to rue, missed chances as Madrid march on, is the headline on the Irish Times. And they also have Foden's winner helps compose City, complete the job in style. Mary Hannigan is talking about the co-coms. I thought Jermaine Genius is decent on co-com. I don't know what everybody thinks. I know everybody hates, it's the rule, you have to hate the BT co-coms, but I don't. And then Shields left to pinch himself after Northern Ireland breakthrough. As Dan was making the point last night, Northern Ireland qualifying for the Euros, it's just a bitter pill, because that's the Ukraine side, obviously, who knocked us out, and they weren't great, that Ukraine side. So it was a big missed opportunity for us. So, and very quickly, World Governing Body bans cyclists from giving water bottles to fans. This is long-standing tradition ends with teams now having to figure out how to dispose of used bidons. And the other one here is Zebo return looked good business for Munster and Ireland. Is there any sense that given that the RFU are ponying up, is there any sense that he won't be involved in the Ireland squad? It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I definitely think that he'll be involved straight away. He's been playing at an unbelievably high level right up until this moment. So I think he has to go straight in. It's just going to be fascinating to see if he can dislodge Hugo Keenan, or is there going to be another position on the wing that maybe they might look at, because Keenan has been so consistent. Keenan's there. It's Zebo's playing for one of the positions on the wing, right? It certainly looks like the best avenue into the starting team. Zebo wouldn't be a bad number 23 if everything was you're in a very luxurious state. But Earls, Keenan, and Simon Zebo is a very assured back three with a lot of excitement to it as well. And it just feels like a really great luxury just to have him back in as an option for the Ireland team.
Yeah, there's really good strength and depth there. All of a sudden, it's Larmour and Lowe pushing. We've got Robert Balakoon. Who else are we missing? Jacob Stockdale. All of a sudden it looks like a real position of strength. Stockdale was really good against Harlequins. Neil Tracy was talking about it on the Type 5 the other day. So his form is coming back to the level that it needs to be at. He is probably in our first choice team if all things being equal, everybody's at their absolute peak form. So, I think that just drives standards. And I think from a Munster perspective, you must be pretty excited.
Oh, without question. It's massively exciting from one point. I know Mike Haley's been good this season, that try he scored against Connacht, and he's not going to give up that jersey without a fight. But Simon Zebo, you'd imagine, is coming in to start. That Munster backline is really exciting, though, isn't it? And it was a really exciting team that they started in the backs against Leinster a few weeks ago, and obviously they came up a little bit short once again. And maybe Simon Zebo just a little bit of magic dust that they require just to get that backline fully firing. The question with Munster next season is going to be, where will the grunt come from up front? Are a couple of the new signings, is Tom Ahern going to come through and show that level of... is he going to come to the same level that, say, Ryan Baird is coming to now for Leinster in the next couple of seasons? Because that's what Munster need. And Simon Zebo is a great cherry on the cake. But for Zebo to excel, other elements of the province need to come together as well.
Yeah, well, I think the assumption is that Snyman is going to be such a step forward for everybody that improves the front row in the scrum and that in just general play. You'll now have two South African powerhouses, that the new signing as well, plus John Klein. So whoever is on the bench is coming on, and it's not a significant difference between the starting pack. It's like slow, steady inches. And then obviously the question is around whether or not Larkham is still there. Again, I just presume as a Munster fan, you're dying for Larkham to stay.
Yeah, like I definitely think with this Munster coaching ticket that they get one more season and to kind of fully form their ideas. And even when it comes to some of their attacking play this season, I think that it helps that the last moment you watch them is the Toulouse game, in a performance that was excellent, in a performance where going into it you're like, how are Munster getting the best out of some of their big names? How are they going to get the best out of Dami Violande? And then maybe his performance against Toulouse was possibly his best in a Munster shirt. And that is something that you have to look at and say, well, how much more could they have done in an attacking sense?
Yeah.
And but I know the conversation is bigger than that. There will always be questions after the season they've had in 10 years without silverware.
Yeah, and look, we'll come back to that because we've plenty of time to do it. It's 20 minutes past 9 here this morning on OTB AM. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Now, our TV picks, Sue would normally be here, but she's on holiday, so Joseph Conroy is in. Joseph, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, I'm good. How you guys getting on?
We're starting with our shiny and new, and you've got something slightly left of centre here for us.
It's shiny and newish. We've got kind of a theme this week, which is kind of reality and docu-series. We're very much starting with reality TV. The Circle is new in the sense that there's a new British and American series out. It's kind of old. It's been running since 2018. But it's a series that I think it's going to be like my last great lockdown binge. And we talked last week about kind of getting some of the greats ticked off your bucket list in these last few weeks. But I've kind of gone to the other end of the spectrum where it's just complete popcorn TV. But it's absolutely brilliant. It sounds awful.
What is it?
But it's brilliant. So premise is you've got strangers in an apartment block, completely rigged out with cameras, can only communicate through a kind of fake social media network called The Circle, which is basically like Facebook. So you've got a profile, you can speak, you can either play as yourself or you can catfish and be someone completely fake. And then at the end of it, basically all your peers are going to vote for the winner who's going to win 100 grand. So your challenge is to come up with a game plan, whether it's kind of be genuine, be nice and nicey, or be a total snake and create factions and play against other people and like sow division. But at the end of the day, you can be as nice as you want, but people want to win the money. And when this first came out, I kind of skipped it. I don't know if it was the marketing or what, but it kind of looked very Big Brothery, but it's actually very different. And this has been kind of a theme of how the show's gone down. Like even The Guardian, the first series, when kind of the first episode 2 came out, there was a review that was like, Channel 4, great bottom of barrel, in reality, race to the bottom. And then like 3 weeks later, it was like, how Channel 4 reinvigorated and reimagined reality TV for 21st century. Oh my God, look at this thing. It did start off with a lot of this kind of thing that you need to do in reality TV now, where it's like a social experiment and you need to sort of keep flagging that every 10 minutes. I was like, it's okay to watch this. It's a social experiment. It's okay. There's smart stuff going on here. But it's absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely addictive. Once you get into it, once you get even slightly in, it's like a king of cliffhangers as well, because you've got people basically you can both give power to people who are then on the side who's going to kick people out, and then as well the catfishing just really escalates. Like say these aren't really spoilers because they're all revealed in the first episode of various series, but you've got Hunter from The Gladiator. In the 90s, in the most recent one, he was posing as an NHS worker, as a nurse, as like a young female nurse. You've got a guy posing as a single mother. In the current US series, you've got a novelist, like a serial novelist who's written 35 books just kind of creating this character, just kind of as he goes along, flowing. So basically what I'm saying to you is it's easy to overlook this show, but if you watch it, you'll really enjoy it.
Where is it? Go on, sorry.
Well, I watched a bit of this. Joe, like on Channel 4, the latest British version of it, and I was completely lost because I think we must be midway through the season or something at the moment. So explain to me, there was this guy who got done for catfishing, I want to say. So did he decide to actually become the NHS nurse, or are the producers saying to him, well, you are an NHS nurse, or like is there creative freedom to actually pick your catfish?
You've got options. There was one of the people who got very far in the second series in the UK version, did a good article with The Independent recently. That was a bit kind of behind the scenes, but basically you can choose. So if you're going in, you can be, I'm going to be this kind of chilled out, 20-something Irish guy, try and be affable, try and get everyone on your side, or you can go in and be an NHS worker. In that case, it was the former gladiator, and he was competing to give half of the 100 grand to the NHS, so he had a bit of a like moral get out clause there. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend coming in halfway through. You're probably going to be a bit lost. But
look at all that great work. Look at all that great work I do for charity while I pick up 50 grand.
Exactly, win-win. But just to answer your question, there's 3 series of the UK version on the All4 app. Again, this is one of those things that's kind of over the years, it's kind of got a bit of a cult following and got some momentum. So if you do get into it, there's like 3 full series there to get through. Like I said, I didn't think I'd like it. I ended up at like up till 3:30 on Saturday night watching this stuff. Like, it's very addictive. There's a new American series, the first US series on Netflix, and the second one, the first kind of cachet of episodes, came out yesterday. So that's all there waiting for you to discover and spend a week of your life on.
How long are the episodes? These are always important things. How many are there?
So again, if we're drawing the lines between total trash and this being popcorn fun, we're talking like 47-ish minutes. So basically a TV hour.
Yeah.
Where say something like Married at First Sight Australia, they're clocking in at like 90 minutes, 100 minutes. So it's very consumable. Enough. Yeah, exactly.
So hang on. Married at First Sight in Australia is 100 minutes per episode.
Jer, I got to this one late. It was like recommended to me. I eventually was like, fine, there's not much else going on. Like, I don't know, Owen, if you can recall off the top of your head, but I definitely remember going through a few episodes, and it was like, rather than just sort of like, oh my God, drip feeding, I need to get on to the next one, it was like, geez, I could watch a film instead of watching this. But yeah, this is a bit more snackable.
No, like, I mean, watching a film would be way worse for your intelligence, really. I mean, if you want to actually improve your intelligence, the new reading an encyclopedia is watching Married at First Sight Australia.
Yeah, films are just made up. This is real life, so gotta be careful with yourself.
Okay. 90 minutes of Married at First Sight per episode. How many episodes are there? 6 minutes.
Oh my God, that's the killer. I don't know, but like it's a very intimidating number. To be honest, I got through the actual weddings and the honeymoons, but then there's like, you're talking like 30, 40. Like, this is like, it's worth having a look, even just from like, just getting the most out of an idea. They've obviously, it's like whatever, the 6 series, they've got this formula down, and they're kings of the sort of, here's like this highly constructed situation where these people want to kill each other, and here's a talking head of a psychologist saying that relationships are difficult. Now back to the action.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, the recommendation this week, and you are recommending that people watch, how many episodes per season in The Circle?
It varies, but you're talking kind of around the 20 mark, so it runs out. It runs kind of nightly, almost nightly for 3 weeks. It is a lot, but I'm just saying the message, the takeaway here is you may be cautious. It might not sound like a good idea, but give it a go, and I'm pretty sure you'll like it.
Okay, so committing 20 hours of your life to watching people catfishing each other. I mean, look, I can see the benefits of it. I really can. So it's called The Circle. There's a UK-US version. There's some stuff on Netflix, and there's some stuff on the All4 app as well. Some stuff that you might have missed on Netflix.
Yeah, just a few quick ones here. Murder Among the Mormons. I'm not sure if this has come across either of your radars, but it's really interesting. I kind of took a bit of a break from the sort of Netflix docu-series, mini-series genre for a while, but then have been sucked back in again recently. Murder Among the Mormons is pretty new. Centers on this pipe bomb attack with fatalities and kind of a string of bombings in 1985 in Salt Lake City, targeting members of the Mormon Church. Without giving too much away, it's linked into this kind of crazy trade of Mormon documents and kind of a black market for both these documents, and also a kind of market for forgeries as well. Obviously, it's really important to religion, given that its kind of basis is these tablets that an angel supposedly gave to Joseph Smith that are quite touchy about it. So some stuff starts coming out that could kind of question the foundations of the religion. You're not sure what's real, what's not real. There's bodies on the ground. There's a person in a fatal condition. It's a good 3 episodes. Lots of colourful characters. Lots of crazy going on. It's a nice little rabbit hole to go down.
Okay,
but nice.
Was it made recently enough? Is it new or is it old?
It's pretty current. It's 2021. Okay. I think it came out in March, but yeah, it's pretty new. And again, it's 3 episodes, so it's a nice length. Another one along the same vein is This Is a Robbery, the world's biggest art heist. Was this robbery from an art gallery in Boston in 1990. Day after St. Patrick's Day, it's kind of like their official St. Patrick's Day. Late in the night, 2 guys dressed as cops come to this art gallery, fleece the place, take Rembrandts, take Vermeers. So there's this kind of, you're starting off with that mystery. It's played out over 4 episodes. So again, kind of not a massive commitment, but a decent amount of time to kind of go through it bit by bit. There's a bit of Irish interest on 2 episodes in. There's kind of 2 main suspects in this art heist, which are the 2 mobs in Boston, which are the Irish and the Italians. There have been some links between the Irish and kind of ways to send money back to fund the IRA in Ireland. So not sure how that storyline is going to play out, but it's definitely there in place. So again, it's really well done and definitely worth checking out.
Okay, so it's called This Is a Robbery, the world's biggest art heist. That's on Netflix as well?
Yeah, that's on Netflix, and that came out in the last couple of weeks as well.
Okay, that sounds decent. Is it worth watching the full 4 episodes?
I'm 2 episodes in, and I'm still hooked. It's a bit of a podcast pace to it, where you might be able to sort of check Twitter while you're listening along to bits, and then big things happen. So
it's funny.
It's good.
It's funny. 3 or 4 years ago, you would have said, "Oh, I was checking Twitter during this. It's not very good." Now it's like, because you're all addicted to checking Twitter, we are all addicted to checking Twitter. It's like, this is so good, I can actually check Twitter and not miss that much.
Exactly. There's good consideration there from the production staff, so plaudits to them. And that's definitely worth checking out.
Last one you might have missed is Sherpa.
Yeah, Sherpa's really good. This is a feature-length documentary, again on Netflix. It's from 2015, but it's only been added to Netflix recently. This is incredible. It's like kind of looking into the whole culture of climbing Mount Everest, where it's following both these Sherpas who work on the mountain and also these tour groups, where you have kind of this guy from New Zealand who's running this big operation where all these people are paying him loads of money to come and like experience Everest. And you have like the Sherpas going and like building these massive tents, like something you'd find like at Electric Picnic or something, like these domes with like TVs and libraries and stuff like halfway up Everest. So you've kind of, they're originally kind of looking at this sort of tension of this sort of like commercialization of everything that's going on and a bit of disregard for the people who are actually doing this dangerous work. And then there has been this kind of idea that there's a disaster looming, and that disaster happens. 16 Sherpas die. So it kind of deals with the fallout of that, a lot of the questions. There's this at the start of the season when they're prepping, when this accident happens. So then there's pressure on the Sherpas to work. Tour operators coming down hard on them. You've got people who paid all this money going over to climb Everest who are freaking out. But really interesting, really damning portrait of the people who are kind of paying all this money going over, and they're like, WTF, we can't go up the mountain while there's this like massive tragedy has just happened. And also there's this kind of Sherpa strike bubbling, where they're sort of protesting that they want more rights if they're going to climb. And then you're kind of, the whole question in the documentary is whether the season's going to go ahead at all. So I would definitely recommend that one. It's one I stumbled upon a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, really, really, really good.
Is that a movie?
That's a movie, yeah. So it's like a 90-minute documentary.
There's a lot to be said for the old 90-minute documentaries where you can get in and out on one night and go, yeah, I've seen that now. That bite size. There's no commitment here. There's no deep and meaningful. We're not, we all understand this is one night and that's it. We're never going to see each other again.
Exactly. And I can guarantee you that there's one scene in it that I won't spoil that will leave your jaw on the floor. So I'll leave you with that.
Okay. 087 180 180 if anybody has any recommendations for this. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. One last one. Stuff you're still watching. Owen, what are you still watching?
Still rewatching the Wire at the moment. Haven't gone back to Married at First Sight this week, unfortunately. Once the Champions League cools down now, there'll be a lot of real estate to watch stuff with. However, we should just mention one thing. Joseph Conroy's moustache this morning, ladies and gentlemen, for those listening on the radio, was the most magnificent thing I've ever seen. He hasn't been on a Skype call with us in a long time. We obviously do all our meetings without being face-to-face. In the sly, while we were growing our pathetic moustaches over the last 4 months, he was growing an absolute 1960s legendary moustache. It was unbelievable, so congratulations to him. But no, I'm not watching much at the moment.
He's gone, I think, is he? He's gone, so he's going to have to look back at the video of you explaining it. It actually would intimidate Darren Cave. That's how good it was. He's back. Joe, you're back.
I'm back. Sorry, what did I miss?
You did Movember on the sly actually not for Movember at all.
I did. Along with watching 5 series of The Circle in lockdown 3, I decided to stop shaving for a while, then left the moustache for the crack. Then girlfriend convinced me to leave it for a week, then got attached to it. So we'll see. We'll have more updates on that as well.
It's staying, is basically. And it was exactly the same thing with Movember. It was like, you're not going to keep this. And you know what? Who cares? I think we should all grow moustaches again.
Exactly.
Yeah, never. What are we?
I think it's actually, I've been watching a good bit of like really early mornings BT Aussie Rules, and just like every second Aussie Rules player just has a big moustache. I think just like by osmosis, it just kind of got into my mind.
Well, it suits you. Congratulations. Eoin was waxing lyrical about it, saying that it was far superior to anything else that has ever appeared on this show. And I'd have to give that a ringing endorsement as well. Good stuff. Thanks very much. Where are you in the wire, Eoin? How far along?
Midway through season 3. I forgot how unbelievable season 2 was, actually. I'm not sure. It's only my first rewatch, so second time season 2. Oh my God, it's so good. And yeah, it's so satisfying to rewatch as well. You're finished it, I think.
Yes. I want to wait until you're finished with season 5. Season 5 is a hot mess. It's like you at the Christmas party, Eoin. It's a hot mess. I will expand on that a little bit later on when we get the opportunity to do it in some more detail. But in the meantime, if anybody has any season 5 wire theories, feel free to share them with us. 0879 180 180. Right, tomorrow morning we've got a very busy show for you. I'll tell you all about that in just a second. A reminder, of course, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. At 1 o'clock today, live, it is our Six Nations show ahead of Ireland against France at the weekend. The history of sport with Paul Rouse at 3 o'clock. Our retro panel is the competitive obsession with Trevor Hogan, Owen Butler and Rory Gallagher. OTB Gold is, as Eoin told you a little bit earlier on, the Lance Armstrong interview, which all of a sudden is relevant again, given the speculation around motor doping in the peloton. And live tonight, we're back at 7 o'clock with Nathan and John Giles and everything else that you would expect from Thursday night off the ball. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 0879 180 180 is the number. We are going to play out with some of the highlights from last night.
Meanwhile, Keith, Simon Zebo, welcome home, Keith. I'm sure they're all saying down there, that's great news. Out of nowhere, really. I mean, I guess his contract had been bubbling away, but suddenly it's all, this wasn't a protracted willy won't he kind of a thing. It's just suddenly announced.
Yeah, it did come out of nowhere. I only heard about it myself today. So I think it's great news. I think it's a 1-year deal, which I think is the appropriate amount. He either comes back, plays, becomes that senior figure that Andy was just talking about. And it'll be interesting to see what he brings back, because when you get players that have been away and come back, they do bring an awful lot of the things that they've learned from it. Also, it isn't too long. You know, he hasn't a 3 or 4 year contract, you know, so he's coming back. I think a lot of the young guys can learn from him. And I think he still has a high level of ambition. So I think he'd have to get himself back. I think he's put on weight while he's over there. He looks an awful lot of a bigger man than he was. So he may have to shed a few of those pounds. But he'd be fighting for his position. And I think he wants to play for Ireland. So, look, he's back in the country, which means he's available. If he fits into the plans, he didn't fit into Joe Schmidt's plans. If he fits into Andy Farrell's plans, I think it's good all around for everybody.
Andy, he's 31. This 1-year contract co-funded between IRFU and Province. So do you read that as, well, here's your chance now, play yourself into a full-on central contract, and that's what this year is about?
I'm not so sure based on the age profile at 31. I probably lean towards more it's safer to give a 1-year contract. It's more economic that they share the costs. I don't believe they would use that as a carrot to dangle in front of Zebo. I think they'll probably, at 31, they may take a couple more. And given his position, he's an outside back as well. If he was a 31-year-old tight head prop, it's quite different to a 31-year-old winger and fullback. And the contract duration tends to get shorter and shorter as the age profile goes up in those positions. So, I mean, what I would say is I think it's a super move both for Simon Zebo and for Irish and Munster rugby. And when I think there was a huge, when Leinster hit a bit of a period in the from about 99 through to the mid 2000s, they hit a period where they were very much, they weren't quite stagnant, but they weren't winning things. And the likes of Leo Cullen and Shane Jennings went off to Leicester and had a different experience and brought back their experience. And someone like Zebo going away from the Munster setup and coming back in and sharing his experience of different environments and different cultures, that could be quite beneficial to that group, because Munster aren't far away from winning things. They're dead close. They're not quite making that conversion. And it did strike me as a similar type of arrangement when the likes of Shane Jennings and Leo came back in, and they made quite a profound impact on the Leinster culture. And maybe Zebo can help in that way as well, based on the experience he's learned from being abroad.
What about his Irish prospects, Andy?
Well, I think he would very much suit the style of play with which we played against England recently. That high tempo offload game, which we hadn't seen a whole lot of, and just showed how dangerous and capable we are. And I think Farrell, with Paulie in there giving a bit of structure to the set piece, and John Fogarty helping out in set piece and up front, and Farrell and Kat, who are more, they seem more aligned to chaos and unstructured rugby than Joe Schmidt, for example. And that's why Zebo didn't fit Joe Schmidt's template. But the creativity and the unpredictable way and the talent he's got with which he plays, that suits that style we played against England. So I would have thought if he has a good run, he's right back in the frame.
Keith, a stupid question for a change. Zebo out of contract in this instance, so it doesn't quite apply, but it just got me thinking, you know, these big transfers in rugby. Why have transfer fees never become a thing in rugby?
I think there have been a couple at different times where people have been bought out of their contracts. Mostly contract length, they're short. They're 2 or 3 years for the most part. Also, the amount of money that's been discussed was not significant. And it is significant to the players, but it's not significant compared to football. And I still think we're a very young professional sport, and I think that's probably more likely the case than anything else. And there's very few people, for the most part, if a guy wants to leave a club, they'll say, okay, you can, if you want to go, you don't want to, off you go. And there has been a few instances, but not many.
So buying out the contracts, yeah, but here's $2 million for Keith Wood. Is that day coming?
I hope not, actually. I don't know that there is that amount of free cash in the game. Like if you look at where we are at the present moment in time and how everybody is suffering financially, look, you could have some of the teams might do it from in France, where they suddenly throw out a very large check. But I think it would be more for the person than for the club.
Yeah. Certainly won't be today or tomorrow, that's for sure.
No.
The Lions coaching ticket was announced, Andy. Andy Farrell not permitted by the IRFU. There's still the possibility, it seems, of a 3-test series in Fiji in July, which sounds like a nice way to spend July, I suspect. So in defence, they have Steve Tandy celebrated for his Scottish work forwards. Robin McBride, obviously, at Leinster, and knows Gatlin through their Welsh connections. Attack is Gregor Townsend, and kicking coach Neil Jenkins. Is kicking coach the great gig? I hope it is. Like, does Jenkins just work with the kickers on place kicking, or is he working on kicking strategy?
I think it is exactly what you say. It is the greatest gig.
Okay.
I know that, for example, Raj was Dan Carter's place kicking coach down in Racing, which I doubt was a tricky job. But, no, I do. I'm a little bit facetious. There is absolutely merit in the role. And I think an example of a kicking coach who had a huge impact on a lot of players was Mick Byrne, Mick the Kick Byrne, 6'7" Aussie rules footballer, played for Hawthorn and Carlton, and was brought into the Leinster setup way back when by Matt Williams. And what Mick started with was, you know, an incredible ability to display his own skill set, because he was good at kicking an oval ball. But he, for example, taught me how to kick a spiral bomb, how to curl a ball both ways, how to kick a ball like a dead rubber. He used to call it a dead duck. And they're all quite different skills. He was very innovative. And he actually went from there into, he ended up the All Blacks skills coach for 2 World Cup wins. And he's a phenomenal coach. So there is an avenue in there from a kicking skills coach point of view to grow into the role and have more of an impact on how the team plays. In the case of a Lions tour, Jenkins, I would have thought he's got one of the more easy roles in terms of a kicking coach on a protracted 8-week tour. But yeah, nice work if you can get it.
Well, he's a Lions legend, Keith, obviously, and you would have toured with him. What kind of fella is he? Will he be a vibes man out there as well?
He's quite. He's a funny fella. I look back on that tour we toured, and in '97, I thought he didn't miss one kick, but he did. He missed a few, but he was an amazing kicker. I don't know if Andy'd say that as a kicker himself, but he was a very relaxed kicker. You know, there wasn't a huge amount of movement on the ball. He knew exactly where he was going. He had a routine, but it didn't look manufactured. He just looked very comfortable when he was doing it all the time. I actually think it's important if you can have that, because it can become essential to how you play. And different people kick in different ways, and it's how does everybody adjust to it? It's not just for goal kicking; it's for different things. You get to understand different elements. I loved it from the perspective that you'd learn something new. And actually, that keeps the guys unbelievably fresh. If they get a tiny little change in how they do something, for goal kicking, it's very difficult because you don't want to be tinkering with it on a Lions tour. You want to be slotting them over, obviously. But if you can learn something a little bit different, the guys get really excited by that. And so I think he'd be.
Jenkins was one of the first kickers to come from the Dave Allred coaching school, where when you look at a Gaelic footballer taking a free kick off the ground in the mid-90s, and they're kicking the ball kind of around the corner with the arch of the foot, and Dave Allred kind of brought a whole new science. He was like the David Ledbetter coming into golf. He was talking about opening out your hip and actually hitting the ball with the laces and the hardest part of the foot, which optimized kind of the distance and the power. And then he honed it down to get more accurate. And I remember I was 16, 17 in the 97 Lions tour. And I just remember seeing Jenkins kicking with, you know, obviously in a high altitude setting, it seemed to be traveling with greater ease, with traveling in straight lines. Before that, you'd see a lot of kickers curl the ball over in different directions. He was kicking the ball through the post in straight lines from every angle. So that Dave Allred approach basically broke down the kicking technique, took away some of the variables, and said each kick is the same, regardless of the angle. And you open out the hip, you approach it a different way and use the hardest part of the foot. And from that Jenkins era, you got all the crouching and Johnny Wilkinson cupping his hands and staring at the post. But Jenkins was a complete outlier. He started that whole process around that period of time. He was the original poster boy for the likes of Allred.
Strangely, I know we've drifted again, of course, as we invariably do in these conversations. In 2001, Allred came on tour with us, and so he was the kicking coach in 2001, but he was also the catching coach, and he had gone off to Gaelic football and come back to say, try and catch it this way and this way and this way. The Irish guys thought this was so natural for us, you know, but it was really interesting how, again, different players from different countries would look at that very differently. The idea of catching a ball above your head just didn't occur, you know, to most rugby players, but for GA players, of course, that's where you're supposed to catch it, you know. So, but he was bringing all those things in as well. So, again, as I said, it makes it really interesting because you learn something new and you get excited by it.
Andy, one last step in this tangent we're taking, and I'll bring us back to the lines then. Of the contenders for 10 for South Africa and the lines, Finn Russell and Sexton and Farrell and Dan Biggar and anyone else I'm forgetting to think of at the moment, who's the best kicker for you?
Of all of those you mentioned, probably Sexton or Dan Biggar, I would say maybe. I think the way Dan Biggar strikes the ball is phenomenal. And I think on form then Sexton and Farrell are maybe just tucked in right behind. I probably have the added advantage of Dan Biggar showing. Dan Biggar's around a long time. At the tail end of my career, he was starting off. And he was one of those kickers that he kicked. People talk about the way Beckham struck a corner and you just knew it sounded different, it flew differently, there was an integrity to the quality of it or the kick. And Dan Biggar struck a ball, it just flew. It was just compact, and the style of it, I was quite taken aback by the quality of his place kicking at the tail end of my own career. I think he's followed it through. Maybe just behind that in terms of quality of strike and consistency, Sexton and Farrell maybe. But I wouldn't say that would be the decision for Gatland. I'm not so sure he'll decide based on place-kicking prowess.
No, and we'll come to that in a second. So in broad terms, obviously 2 Scots there in the coaching ticket in Tandy and Gregor Townsend. They met at a hotel in London last week, I suspect virtually. I don't know whether they all there or not. But anyway, Gatland asked all 4 of them, give me your 36 names. He took 41 to New Zealand, but he said, give me your 36 anyway. And the word is that 20 to 25 unanimous names were on everybody's sheets. All in all, they discussed 57 different players. It seems Kelleher was discussed, Doris was discussed, according to McBride. Gatland made the point, Keith, there'll be more Scots this time around. I suspect, especially so with the 2 Scots on the coaching ticket. But interestingly, he really cited the fact that they had won away in France and won away in England in this year's Six Nations, albeit without fans. And down the years, he's often said, look, I put more weight on away form, and Scots haven't delivered away from home. So they've turned that around this year. So the Scots, for the first time in a long time, may not be given out on May 6th.
No, in fairness, it wouldn't be hard for them to be more Scots than there normally is, because there's been precious few over the last number of Lions tours. So I think there is a chance for more Scots, and I do think their performances showed different things. I also think the Six Nations was very unusual. So for the amount you read into it, do you read in that some players have dropped out of form or dropped out of fitness to go on a Lions tour? It was funny reading some of the papers over the last couple of days and some of the English papers, and Ian McGeechan today, he picked his line squad, which I thought was all over the shop. But the idea of looking back on 4 years ago as to how good they were 4 years ago as a guide for selection, that's a hard one. So I think there will be more Scots because they have shown different things. I think the idea of Finn Russell becomes very interesting. I find him an infuriating player to watch because, and yet we keep saying we want more excitement. And yes, he definitely has excitement, but he also has times where his brain goes west and, anything could happen. So whether you want that in a Lions or not, but with his coach, and when you think back to 97, Gregor was playing 10. The more conservative 10 was Neil Jenkins, and he was a bloody good 10. But Gregor was different. And still, you picture 10 at 15, and Jenkins was a poor 15. Like he didn't actually quite know what to do at times. And some of the kicks that were coming down on him, he didn't come within a postcode of where they landed. But he was magnificent, and he's the reason we won, So it's trying to get the right players on the field. You get them on the plane first, and then get them on the right guys on the field that make it work. And it worked for us, and we were lucky.
And how did the Irish do in McGeechan's squad?
Yeah, there weren't many. I don't think there were 3 second rows. He had James Ryan, Henderson, and Tadhg Byrne, which I think that could be interesting. It depends on the numbers, is exactly how many we have out there. We definitely had Tadhg Furlong.
Did he have Sexton?
Did he have Sexton? I think he didn't have Sexton. No, I'd have to remember. I didn't give it full study now, if I'm honest.
You took a glance at it and said, this is all over the shop.
I thought it was all over the shop, actually, yeah. So.
To what extent will Gregor Townsend, because he is attack coach, do you think, Andy, will he just be told, you dictate how we're going to attack, therefore you get a huge say in selection, therefore you get a huge say in who the out half is, because that's the on-field general, do you suspect? I know that's a difficult question to answer because this can come down to force of personality as much as anything else. But would you read into Gregor Townsend that we will now have a better than evens chance of Finn Russell at 10?
I actually think, I would have thought that decision, it comes down to how willing Gatland is to share responsibility. I mean, and his history would suggest he's very willing. He's not typically been known as he doesn't lead in a dictatorship. He's very much, he's big into that empowerment of his coaches and empowerment of his players. And he would, from a specific coaching point of view, he's not dishing out micro detail really at any level. And right back to at the start of the conversation, we mentioned kind of 2003. That season I went over to England, he was coaching Wasps. And Wasps being in London, I became friendly with a couple of the players, and they used to comment on how there was such an obvious lack of detail in a lot of the coaching sessions. They put huge emphasis on physical preparation, optimizing your mindset, your physical approach, not hugely focused on micro detail in terms of execution on the field and tactics or technique. And I'm sure he's evolved a lot since then. He's been hugely successful, but he does seem to empower his staff around him and his players. So in that sense, if Townsend is given a brief to really have influence on the attack of the team, there's probably is a greater chance Finn Russell's involvement, provided they've actually kissed and made up.
I was just going to say it, Andy. That makes it really interesting, because if he doesn't go, does that reignite the argument that
yes. We don't know.
So, yeah.
Well, I heard Gregor Townsend interviewed on 5 Live during the Six Nations, and he was effusive about Russell and talked about how he absolutely has developed into a test out half. And could he go on the lines? He was asked. Absolutely, like effusive. Now, he's his head coach, and at that stage you have to be effusive. Maybe it's a different conversation when you're going as part of the ticket, but
he doesn't fit the mould of a Northern Hemisphere out half. He's always fit the mould of a Southern Hemisphere out half, where in the Northern Hemisphere we look at Finn Russell and say he's a talented flake. In the Southern Hemisphere they say he's talented and he doesn't need to take on the entire responsibility of running the team at all times. And that's a total different philosophy they have down south. You know, James Hart played an Irish lad who's now playing in Biarritz, who joined Munster a couple of years ago. He played 9 in Racing Club with Carter at 10, the greatest out half maybe ever, certainly in the professional era. And what was he like, James? He never said a word. He just walked around. He just did nothing, except occasional brilliance, and made his tackles and passes. He's a very different style. Raj, Johnny Sexton, Owen Farrell, they never shut up. They're angry. They're demonstrative. They run the entire show. Finn Russell doesn't fit that mold. So sometimes in the Northern Hemisphere, he doesn't seem to fit the overall idea, but he could be the ideal foil going down to South Africa to break the game up and be creative.
If they bring 3, Keith, are we saying Farrell, Sexton, Russell? We leaving out bigger? Is that where we are?
Yeah, they could bring 3.
Might bring 2?
They might bring 2 and bring Farrell as a centre, as a 12, which can happen, or vice versa. And it happened at the last time and it worked very well. To be honest, I think when I look at this, I was doing something earlier on and we're just having a conversation about the lines. I think when you play against South Africa, you have to match as much of their physicality as you can, but you need to try and play smarter. So you need to move it away. You can't go for one-out runners all the time. You really need to shake up the game a lot. And I think as many playmakers as you can have, I think that suits you. I think you're a better player. The Lions have to play smarter than South Africa. I don't think they can bully them off the field. I think they have to try and meet and stop as much of the big power game as they can. But they need to think their way around the field. And for that, you need playmakers.
One last one in all this. I saw New Zealand are now vaccinating their Olympians. Obviously, New Zealand are in a pretty healthy situation on the COVID front. Gatland yesterday, I mean, I don't think it was an aggressive, we must be vaccinated type call, but he did say, look, we could all get vaccinated before we go out. That'd be a real boost for the playing group and the way we probably operate on the tour. It does pose an ethical dilemma, probably a PR one as well, skipping the queue versus vulnerable people, but then maybe you argue, well, the entertainment for the masses or for those who are interested in sport comes into it. Where are you on all that?
Well, I think it's different. It's actually different between the UK and Ireland. So I think I've lots of friends that are in their 40s getting vaccinated already. It'll be 30s in the next couple of weeks anyway. We're a little bit behind that, but I do think it'll happen as it's happening ordinarily. I think it becomes a very, very sensitive conversation to have here if we're getting people who haven't been vaccinated and you get elite sports people being vaccinated for it. And I can understand that. And in fact, that isn't the way it should be. But I think we've plenty of time between when they meet up and they're going over to be vaccinated. I think by the time it gets to it, especially they're going to be based in the UK, I'm going to say that all the people at that age group will have been vaccinated at that stage, give or take. So I think it becomes less of an issue with it.
Yes.
Very sensitive today, because if you have somebody who's 75 and hasn't been vaccinated and they see some of the Irish rugby team getting vaccinated for it, would they be peeved off? You're dead right they would, and justifiably.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.